Welcome to Self Perfected.
Oh,
Hey everybody.
What's
yo,
up?
this is
what's
the
up?
advanced one. Oh no, it's all at once. Okay, never mind.
Hey Christine, I'm gonna send you a couple pictures. Or actually, I could probably just share on my screen. Where should I send them
He
to?
tried to make granola and he needed to see if C got approved.
I'll send them to
Interesting.
Facebook Messenger.
Yeah.
No, like it's something I want to share on the meeting. Like it's really cool. There's something to talk about.
Why don't you just share it on your screen? Well, that was really descriptive.
I could do that. Okay, I'll just send it to myself. Either I have to send it to somebody either way.
Yesterday, Christine and I went down to visit with Melissa, and
Oh yeah.
and then we also Chantel and Owen came up to also visit Melissa because she's like midway.
So it was
between
like
us,
this.
pretty much. Yeah.
basically.
To
Yeah,
the epicenter.
Then there was
It was
like
pretty
an
epic.
explosion. Yeah. No, it was pretty cool. It was a lot of fun. Like Melissa shared like in a class setting. She had some people come over. That was cool. And then we got to see her house and stop by and say hi to Aria really quick, really briefly. And then hey, does this sound better? Is my sound sounding better now?
Yeah, it's a little louder. Yeah,
All right, cool.
I want to hear that full 360 Drake voice.
Full 360 Drake. Just be surrounded by. You are now entering. Do 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 do. Do you guys remember that song? It was like Missy Elliott.
That Mozart song. That's like dun 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 dun. That's
I
what you're
remember that
trying to
Missy
do,
Elliott
right?
song where she
Missy
dresses up in
Elliott,
that black plastic
Mozart.
bag.
If she dresses like what?
In the black plastic bag.
Black plastic bag.
No, is that the picture you were sending, Christine?
Is that the one?
You remember
is
that one? It was like for that
Yeah,
for
see
that Superfly or whatever song or whatever it was called. I can't remember what it was called.
I don't think it was called
It's like
Superfly.
I can't smell the rain. You know,
Oh
remember that
yeah.
song?
Oh wow, you remember that song?
And she was like in like the music video. She had like it was like the black. It looked like a black plastic bag, but it was like this suit that was like real puffy. and,
It's
like,
my
the shiny
window.
black.
Oh,
I
Yeah.
can't
I don't know if you
smell the
remember.
rain. That's
she's wearing like a
crazy.
snowsuit.
I
Basically,
didn't know you went that far back with Missy.
Oh yeah, dude. As
Okay.
they would say, I fucks with Missy. Not really. I just watched too much MTV when I was a kid.
Okay. It's just like everybody else.
That was around the Tom Green era. For those of you who remember that far back.
Nope. Sorry.
Yeah, man. Wow.
Yeah, it's
Who
just
the hell was
really
Tom
dig-
Green? Was he like an
I'm really
MC on
dating
it?
myself.
Yep.
Yeah,
I
I
should
know.
buy
You're
myself some flowers, you know, and take me out on a nice dinner.
At least take me to the movies first. Yeah, so yeah, we got to hang out with Owen and Chantel, walk around with them in Vero Beach, explore a little bit, have some fun. And then one thing I realized after, so this is kind of connected, kind of not, but it was like I was expressing it in my conversation with Owen because we had watched that YouTube documentary that Mayor had sent about
Amazon?
Amazon, that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing that like kind of sparked in my mind as I was watching that was like, oh shit, this is really cool. What was really cool about it was something that's like a thread between Amazon and Facebook and even Warren Buffett and like anybody who's like worth a lot in our current society is they're really good at data collection. They're really good at data collection and more importantly, data interpretation, right? And
You mean information processing?
exactly. Exactly. It's exactly what we're doing, right? It's like we're literally telling, like, okay, we're telling parents, listen, your kid has to be really good at this skill and ability to process information. And parents are like, yes, but all the other kids are not that good at processing information. Wouldn't it be okay if my kid is also not that good at processing information?
Well, not every parent says this, but yes, I know what you mean.
A lot of them do. A lot of
It's
them.
the if my kid's really smart, they won't be able to relate to anybody. I'm like, you mean like Elon Musk and Warren Buffett and Jeff Bezos, how they can't relate to anybody? Like, why doesn't everybody relate to them instead
Right.
of the other way around? It's like if my child doesn't believe they're a slave, they won't relate to the other slaves. I'm like, well, how about this? You focus on your child, we'll support them, and I'll go get the other kids. Okay, how about that? I'll make a deal with you. That's the key.
That's
But
it.
I mean, that
That's
is
it.
part of it. That's part of the story they have to explain to parents, right? Is like,
Yeah.
yeah, we're gonna help them too. Don't worry about that. Because at the end of the day, though, a system change is what's required.
Right. Of course.
Right?
Of course.
I
Yeah.
can't imagine doing that to my son. I'm like,
Well, can you
listening to
imagine?
this well, I could imagine how I could do it.
Remember one
However,
time somebody said like, I forget
Like,
what it
can't
was
accept
specifically, but they were like, "Oh, I can't imagine that." But I was like, "Really? Okay, well then you're gonna have to experience it."
Mm.
Right.
Damn.
So it's like I always catch
Yeah.
myself just from the perspective, I can't imagine, like, because it's like a separation. It's like, well, actually, hold on. I could imagine it and I can see why somebody would do it. So it's taking the responsibility within it, right?
Yeah.
But I understand the sentiment, right? It's like, well, fuck, why would you do that? But you wouldn't if you knew
Right.
and you had the tools.
Right.
So
Yeah. Well, I won't accept myself to act that way with my son. I'll
Yeah.
phrase it like that. It's like, it's so funny. It's almost like, I mean, some people think, oh, it's work to make your son be a genius. It's like,
it's work.
it's actually not. It's just a different kind of work, because if you raise your kid and you just expose them to a bunch of bullshit, like Frozen or those movies we talked about last week, it's like, sure, maybe you have a little more convenience now. Let's say they're 3 and you're like, I just need to get stuff done around the house, so I'm just going to put them in front of the TV. It's like, sure, in that moment you've now made it more convenient for yourself to get stuff done. But if you look at the second consequence of that, it's like, now that kid can't relate to you. Now all of a sudden they're saying shit and you're like, where did that come from? Now they're more dramatic throughout the day. And so it's pretty cool, because when you just do it right from the beginning, it's like everything else falls into place.
That's so funny that you're bringing that up, because this is exactly what Melissa was talking about in her class yesterday. And she was talking about this point of
Great
instant.
minds think alike.
Yeah, there you go. She's talking about this point of instant gratification, right? And she was saying how, like, what are some things that kids do for instant gratification, or like we were just bringing up the point of instant gratification in the context of kids, because there was like some experiment done where they were trying to see, like, okay, we give a kid a marshmallow and then we walk out of the room, but we tell them, if you can wait till we come back in the room, we'll give you 2 marshmallows, right? And so they set a marshmallow in front of the kid, they walk out of the room, and then they like go behind some like a 2-way mirror, and they just watch the kid. And most of the kids are like, as soon as they go out the room, they're like, my marshmallow, right? But it's interesting, because she's like, well, what do parents do? They'll put their kid in front of like an iPad, or they'll give them a sweet or whatever just to shut them up. And you think that you're giving the kid instant gratification, but really it's the adult who's getting the instant gratification there, because they've shut the kid up for that moment, right? And then, like Mitch is saying, there is the second order of consequence and third order of consequence. It's like, if you want to ensure that your family will be fucked up for generations, like, if you want to just like not take responsibility for the next generation and the next generation, and like you're looking at, oh man, those Rockefellers, they're so lucky, they're so the Vanderbilts, like someone way down the line made a bunch of money and they pass it on, and man, it's just not fair. It's like, okay, but you have the opportunity to be that one guy, that one person in your family to change it for the rest of your family. And every time you don't, and you give in to that instant gratification of just like, well, I just want my kid to be quiet and fit in and not stand out and don't do the hard work, then you're actually creating more work for not just yourself, but for your family down the road.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, it's interesting because people will say, like, creating what you just said, Mitch, raising a genius is harder. But is it actually harder? Because either way, you're gonna deal with some sort of consequence, whether the consequence be like now you have a really smart child, or now I have to deal with a kid that's emotionally unstable, can't direct themselves. You know, you need to be they're really dependent on you, right? Because they don't know how to interact with reality. So it's like, what really is actually harder? I think, you know, in this case, it would make more sense actually to raise the genius, because then you're actually going to deal with a consequence that's actually more effective. But because this consequence that we talk about, that people are just raising their kids with what the norm is, but the norm isn't actually what's best. It's just what people are most used to. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, like it's just because it's normal doesn't make it like, oh, like this is a better way. And I think that's what
Oh
we're
no,
about.
it's the stupidest way.
Well, and I'm glad you're seeing that too, because it's something I try to explain and explain to y'all so y'all can see it as well. But it's like, if you have a kid who is docile or just does what you say, what's the consequence going to be later?
They're just
Is
going to
that they're not going to
authority.
Right. So you're creating a consequence. And I mean, that point about it being hard work, it's like, it's not like I'm unaware of what parents have to do that are not doing what I'm doing and what Katie and I are doing, right? I'm aware of it. And it's not more work. It's the same amount of work. Like, imagine looking at something based on whether it's more or less work, as that's the indicator of whether you're going to do it or not. That's like somebody going like, well, I don't want to build a business because having a job, it's like less work. I'm like, well, no shit. But is it less work? Because you go to your job, okay, so you're there 8 hours, right? But don't you have to sit in traffic? Do you have to drive there? Let's just say 30
No,
minutes there and
Cameron.
back. That's an hour, right?
We get to work from home nowadays, Cameron. That was so 2019.
True.
I just have
But
to
now
sit
they're
on Zoom
firing
all day.
people if they don't go back to work. But let's just say you have to sit in traffic for 30
Instead of
minutes either way, right?
2019.
Right. But you know, if you work at Walmart, you're not fucking doing that from home, right?
That's true. You can't be a Walmart
Okay.
greeter from home.
So you're at it. So
Imagine
you're
that they
working,
try and put them on Zoom.
Hi,
have to be
welcome to
gone-
Walmart.
Hey, when you're at a job, when you take your lunch break, is that part of the 8 hours or is that 9 hours?
No, it's
9
9
to
hours.
5.
It's 9 hours.
Because
Okay.
yeah, you take your lunch break. They're like, yeah, you can take an hour break, but you gotta stay till 6.
But they say if you have a 9 to 5 job, okay, well, so let's just say you're there for like 9 hours, right? Okay. Then you have to get up early to get ready for that. So that's probably at least an hour, right? And then you have to get your kids ready. You have to take them to school, or you have to get them onto the bus. You have to spend the time to get them ready. And then when they come home, you have to make them do their homework and do all that stuff. So how is it less work than if you built a business? What if you just spent the 8 hours building a business instead of going to your job? How is it more work? What if you spent the half an hour in the morning and half an hour at night that you were getting your kids ready for school or whatever, or instead of that, you just use Technotutor and teach them about stuff? Because that's what we do. And
Yeah.
then the rest of the day, the mom's with them. I mean, how is that? Like, being alive is work. So what's the objection exactly?
I think it's just the level of risk. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the job has like this false sense of security. Sending them to school has this like sense of security that you know that there's going to be this outcome, even though everyone didn't actually get what they wanted out of any of these institutions. But, you know, that's aside from the point. But I think it's just that level of safety and security. It's like everyone's operating under this survival of like, if I go to a job, I don't have to take risks. And I know this because like I remember growing up and my mom and my parents just being really adamant on like, you know, you're going to go to school, get a job and get something that has like good benefits and a good salary kind of thing. And anything beyond that was like, oh, you can dream big, but you can't dream too big. and like the idea of a business was never even put on the table. And I had to discover that entrepreneurship like on my own to realize like, oh, if I actually want to make a lot of money, it can't be through a business, it can't be through a job, sorry, it has to be through a business. So it's like they're also just telling you like you have to be within a certain level, because the level of risk, it's like it's just too risky to even put yourself out there to make a business. You're gonna put it's gonna be so much so hard. You're not guaranteed any money. And that's just how, like, I know that's how I was impulsive. Like building a business is like it's just way too risky. I'd rather you just like do the other thing and make sure that you're secure.
It's that point of like not wanting to take responsibility. Like everyone is, well, most everyone is impulse with not taking responsibility. Take as least responsibility as you possibly can is how parents raise their kids, even when they're telling them, hey, you need to clean up these dishes, that's your responsibility. And like giving them all these little tasks or chores, but it's not actually giving them responsibility. It's you're imposing on them what they must do and like not helping them understand that. Okay, so that's like what we would call a low vocabulary understanding of responsibility, right? Is like, oh yeah, responsibility is when you take out the trash and you do this. It's like, no, responsibility is knowing like why you should take out the trash and why it makes sense. And okay, here's what happens if you don't take out the trash, and who's there, and okay, can this person do it? Can I do it? If I do it, then what does that make sense? And like, how is that going to affect my life? And then what other things are going on that are going to affect whether I take out the trash or do the dishes or clean up or whatever. It's like it just makes sense. You're doing it out of your own volition. Like responsibility is not a chore, even though that's how many people understand it. And so they avoid responsibility like a plague, but it's really that they don't even understand what responsibility even is. Otherwise, if you could understand responsibility, then you would want to take as much responsibility as possible, because it's literally power. It's like, it's literally the the ability to do whatever the fuck you set out to do, because you're taking, I'm using the word, like, I feel like I'm defining it, but I'm using the word in the definition, right? But you're taking the ability to do those things and actually make sure that it gets done and make sure that the outcome is the outcome that would be best. That's like actually taking responsibility. And then when it's not, going, okay, what happened here? And going and looking at what did you do? What can be better? And, finding out, okay, bringing it to where it is best. That's actually taking responsibility.
There's a belief within people that if you don't take responsibility for something, you're not responsible for it. Or if you choose not to be responsible, then you don't have to take responsibility. It works that way too. So it's like, well, I put my kids in school, so I took responsibility for their education, but you didn't actually.
That's not my responsibility.
Because so who's responsible for the outcome?
The school.
Right. But you're the parent, you're taking the responsibility, right? So aren't you responsible for the outcome? And so they don't understand that, like when we look at, for example, poverty in this world, no one's taking responsibility for it by directing the economic systems properly. So there's poverty. And then we say, well, I'm not responsible for that because I just go into my job and I do this, and I don't own the banks. I don't own the governments and make the laws. And it's like, but you're allowing it. So you're responsible. You may not be able to respond to that immediately right now, and it kind of goes back to the point of being able to build a business when you've learned to get a job. It's like, let's just say you now see the benefit of being able to lift up a particular stone, okay, for whatever reason, right? Well, or you want to be able to do that if you ever have the need to do it. You have to start going to the gym now and working and building muscles so that when that time comes, when you need to do it, or if you need to do it repeatedly, you're able to do it. But it takes time to get there. So yes, you're in a job now, you're fucked. Okay, well, you want to build a business. You may not be, you're not going to be able to just suddenly stop and then you're going to start building. That'd be like if I was like, okay, I'm weak, I have never worked out, well, I'm just going to now go lift that stone, I'm taking responsibility. Well, you can't, because you haven't built the muscle required to do it. You could try, but you will fail. And so then if you're in the job employee point, you have to now consider, how do I now add to what I'm doing and build a business and develop those points? And that's why TechnoTutor and the tools that we talk about are key, because it's the way you change over time to now be able to lift that stone. It's like the gym. It's prepares, and lifting the stone is not just a one event. You're going to lift many stones progressively, more and more, and then you're going to be lifting many stones at once. And that's how you build something, right? So the point is not, if you're like, well, I can't educate my kids myself because I don't know anything. Well, okay. But just saying, since I don't know anything, I'm not qualified, therefore I'm gonna put my kids in school, is not actually taking responsibility, because you haven't done the due diligence of looking at what's the actual result of the school. Are the people there actually qualified? It's like, would you, well, I mean, people do this, but it's like, think about you go to a job, right? And you're interviewing people, right? And they sending you resumes, right? They're sending you resumes. And they say, oh yeah, I went to Harvard, right? And you're like, oh, cool, you have an MBA from Harvard, all right? Do they actually call Harvard and check?
No.
Who does, right? It's kind of like that. It's like the teacher of your kid's school, let's say you have kids in school, they say, well, I have a degree from so-and-so. I'm not saying they don't have the degree, but you're assuming that equals they're qualified. But did you actually check? What did they learn? What is their what is their actual skill set? How do they actually teach? What are their results? They've been a teacher for 3 years. How many kids have actually gone on to do the things that you want your kid to be able to do? Have you actually checked that out? Or maybe obviously they wouldn't be old enough, but you would check the methods that this teacher learned that have been applied over many years. What has been the result? So the parents don't do that. They just go, oh, it's just like going, well, I'm going to put on some PBS for him because that's educational. It's like, no, that's just a company that branded itself that way and made you feel like it's educational. I mean, how can you fucking claim it's educational? Have you ever watched Sesame Street?
Yes.
They're
Talk about words, Cameron.
guys. Well, you know what's crazy? How long has Sesame Street been around? Since like the 70s, right?
A long time.
Yeah,
They're
wow.
still doing the alphabet and the single digit numbers.
Some
Yeah, 'cause
kids didn't
you
learn
out-
it yet.
You outgrow it, and next
And then,
generation.
okay, but what's
Your kids, you got to indoctrinate your kids.
but where's the okay, you learn the alphabet with Sesame Street, apparently, right? I mean, we don't, but let's just pretend like you do, right? Okay. Where's the program that you watch that teaches you algebra?
No, that you have to go to school for.
Yeah.
But no one learns algebra in school. So where's the educational program? Because you're going to learn the alphabet in school anyways, right? Why aren't you having programs where your kids learn all the? It just, the logic of it doesn't make sense. Educational, because you watched a documentary about sharks. I mean, okay, you may have learned some things about sharks, but you ever watched a documentary about sharks? And it's like, and then it's like you're not actually fucking learning anything. Like, are your kids going to sit and watch a documentary for an hour about how sharks' gills work? Or is it going to be like, and now the shark is attacking the cage? And it's like, it's not actually educating you on anything. It's just finding a way to stimulate you so you want to keep watching it. It's not educational. The educational programs, I mean, you watch PBS, with the exception of Sesame Street talking about the alphabet, nothing else is educational. It could even claim to be educational.
What else do they even do
I
on
mean-
Sesame Street?
I think that's like 90%, 99% of TV anyways. It's just garbage.
Well, that's the thing. Watch Sesame Street and you see it's just a bunch of like weird, kind of semi-spiteful like jokes and drama, and it's just a bunch of bullshit. It's literally no value in it whatsoever. It's just entertainment, period. There is no educational content in it whatsoever. And they actually started it in response to the war on poverty back in the 70s. It was part of like the war on poverty initiatives, right?
Yeah.
Which they showed had zero effect, right? But it's a brand. People buy the toys and this and that. So it's a popular brand. That's all it is. Another thing I was thinking about too is because so you have PBS, it's like educational, right? What's Disney's thing?
Mickey Mouse.
Magic.
Magic, right?
Mhm.
Right. Okay. And I was looking at this the other day because like there was some book that Seneca saw at the library, and it was called Princess Magic. It was a Disney book, right? And she picked it up and she was like, "Look, Cameron, Princess Magic." It was so funny. Like she's so cute. And so we were like talking about the different things and what the characters mean and everything in this Disney book, which obviously we didn't buy it or we buy things at the library. But you know what I mean? Like they were just looking at it.
Yeah.
And it's like with the kids, we don't impulse them to be afraid of Disney. We just explain to them what it is. Does that make sense? Now
Yeah.
we're not going to go and buy a bunch of Disney shit and let them watch all that stuff, but we're not like, never look at that. Don't look at it. Right. So, anyways, they'll see
You
it.
don't tell your kids Disney's the devil.
No, yeah.
Ah,
It's the Satanist agenda. It's like, well, actually, I'm getting to that though. So, anyways, I was just bringing that up because it was funny, right? But then I was looking at that book and I was like, Katie, look at this. It's literally Princess Magic. Like, how much more blatant can the programming be? Princess Magic. I'm like, first of all, you got the princess thing, okay, which what the fuck? And then two, magic. And I started thinking about it because, you know, I like before I started even studying Destiny, I read a lot. I studied a lot of different things, like not just in school, like, you know, all kinds of different things, right? I was getting into spirituality and not really spirituality per se, but like esoteric type stuff, right? And I studied for a little bit. There's this author named Colin Wilson, and he has this really great book that's like the history of like alchemy and esotericism.
esotericism.
Yeah, esotericism.
That one.
And it's a really cool history that he wrote about it. So I started like kind of dabbling and like reading all this stuff. And I got this book one time. Remember, I started to get into Aleister Crowley, right? And this is going to trigger all the Christians, right? I knew you guys were Satanists. Although Aleister Crowley was not a Satanist, but he was a magician, right? And so you've heard of alchemy, right?
Mhm.
And is alchemy really about turning things into gold?
I mean, that's what they
people
say.
think, right? That's what people think. It's about they're trying to figure out how to take metal and turn it into gold. Like
Take lead,
right.
and turn it to
it's
gold.
like these were symbols.
Mhm.
They were actually trying to create enlightenment, right? They were trying to not just enlightenment, they were trying to figure out how to take energy and make it be a source of power for them. Right. So you study magic, like actual real magic, not sleight of hand, illusionary type stuff. People were trying to figure out how to channel energy and use energy to become more powerful. It's literally what mega corporations do. It's why we have the Super Bowl. It's a magic ritual, right? It's why we have you know, like big major events, big things like 9/11s, all these kind of things. Whether you think it was really happened or didn't happen or whatever you think, like the way the media utilized it and put it in our faces, right, was a magical ritual, if you will, meaning it's like getting people's attention, getting the energy hyped up, and then channeling that energy into something. The pandemic was used the same way, right? So that's what magic actually is, right? And what's fascinating is when you look at Disney, and what is one thing that people always talk about the elite? What's that one thing that they do that it's like super taboo, sinister,
Rituals,
Failing
yeah, like
sacrifice.
sacrifice, right? And specifically, like they talk about child
with the
sacrifice,
kids.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly, right. And when you think about it, the whole point of sacrifice is to raise energy and to put the person into a state of trance where it's like they can channel something. That's the idea of it. Okay. That's what Disney is, if you think about it. It's just sucking children's innocence and channeling their energy, their essence, their life force into not only making them into consumers and slaves, but to take that energy and to create power with it. Do you see that? So imagine Disney is a huge mega corporation, and now they own Marvel, they own Star Wars, and now they're getting into all the trans shit and the LGBT stuff.
Yeah, they have their
Right?
streaming, Disney Plus.
Disney Plus, the streaming, all it's like there's, and I mean, there's so many things. Maybe some of you could look up what all the stuff Disney owns now. Right. I remember when they bought ABC, right?
Wow.
So they own a shit ton of stuff. And it's like they started with the premise of magic and specifically with children. And what I'm trying to explain to people is when you talk about magic, what do you think that means? Do you think they're talking about magic like card tricks? What magic are they referring to? It's like they're actually in your
Probably
face
that
going,
feeling.
we're about magic. Huh?
So they own ABC Broadcast Network, ESPN, Freeform, FX, National Geographic, I guess Disney Plus, Star Plus, ESPN Plus, Hulu. That's
They own
just like
Hulu.
in like a little.
What brands do
yeah.
they own? Can you look up what brands they own? That would be like your Marvel and things like that.
Yeah. Okay.
don't
I
think they own
guess
Marvel.
Walt Disney,
I don't know if they
Pixar,
own Marvel, but they have the rights to it.
Lucasfilms, 20th Century Studios, 20th
Oh,
Century
Marvel.
Animation, Searchlight Pictures.
Oh,
This is
that's right,
just-
because they bought it from Universal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah. I mean, look at all that,
Wow.
right? So it's like I don't know if I'm getting the point across, but it's like it'd be like if I was deliberately creating like what if I was a weapons company, right? And my slogan was fear. Like, and I was just straight up telling you, we use fear to make money. Like, that's what Disney is doing. They're like, it's about magic. They're literally fucking telling you they're about magic.
That's pretty funny.
Does
That's
that make
really
sense?
funny. Yeah, like as a weapons company, but the way you would do it as a weapons company, you would say like, we impose fear. Right? And then,
It's like, imagine Disney is saying, we literally are performing magic rituals and we're using your child as this energy source for that. That's what they're actually saying. And people think it's like, oh no, it's about magic. I'm like, what's the value of magic? What do you think magic means?
like
It
creativity.
feels good, Cameron.
Yeah.
And like the feeling of love,
Anything
the
can
feeling of
happen.
wonder.
Here's another one. Here's another good one. Remember when Obama ran the first time?
Yeah.
Right? It was about hope, right? They
Hope.
literally were saying hope,
Hope and yes, we can.
right? But the hope point, hope.
Yeah.
They were like, we're about hope. It's like, so you're literally just saying you're exploiting people's hope. You're generating a bunch of hope in people, and you're exploiting that, and that's how you're going to get power. But what's the result of the hope? Like literally, he's just going to go in
and
and every other
low,
president did.
like the low vocabulary interpretation of that, because I know so many people who just love Obama and think it was just the greatest thing because he was a symbol of hope. Is like, times have been so tough for us. We've been so screwed over. Now we just get some hope to just keep going.
Right. It's like, how are
And
we
look at where we're at now. No, it's crazy.
But yeah, so when I was looking at the Disney point, I'm like, they're just where is the value of magic? Like, that's not something we impulse in our house, magic. My kids know what it is. We talked about it, but we're not impulsing like it as a value. What's the value of magic? And then I remember talking to a parent one time, and they were being honest with me about, why they did like Christmas and stuff in their home. And they were like, I just, that feeling of, that magical feeling of like when the kids are coming down the stairs and I'm like, yeah, that's the feeling you're getting. You're literally abusing your children to generate a feeling inside of yourself. You don't even realize you're abusing yourself within that, but that's what you're doing. And then imagine somebody getting really upset with me and defending that. Like, how fucking dare you? Like, first of all, they would say, how dare you say I'm an abuser? I'm like, well, but first of all, you're defending the abuse.
Yeah. It's kind of funny.
Justify to me why it's valid.
Like if
You could justify to me why your child should have water, why they should have food, why they should have, clothing, education. Justify to me why they need magic. They say the magic of childhood. But I could easily show you can have that, the same thing you're looking for, which is like a fun experience, right?
I was gonna say it's mostly for fun.
Do you need Disney for that? Do you need Christmas for that? Like, you don't fucking need any of that stuff. And then we also know as parents, when we're honest with ourselves, the whole Christmas thing, it just makes the children spoiled. There's no magic in it. You're just abusing the point. You're lying to yourself. What were you gonna say, Jay?
I was gonna say, like, also that point with like princesses is like, I can see how people don't see this because I was there too, but like the whole point of like princesses and princes and kings and queens, it's like, why don't you just say what it really is? Like, slave master and slaves. It's like, oh, I want to be a slave master one day. That's literally what they're getting everybody to like participate in. Is like, I want to be a princess. Like,
just accepting that system. And
No
what's interesting
equality whatsoever.
Yeah, you want everyone to wait on you hand and foot. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, I get it.
So consider this for a moment. Disney, which is saying it's using magic,
yeah,
is continuously impulsing children to accept
inequality.
the royalty construct
Yeah.
as a valid point without realizing. Because like for example, Seneca, she was wearing this pink dress and she was looking at the cover and she was like, look, I look like a princess. Because like there was a Sleeping Beauty one that had a pink dress. She was like, I look like a princess, because her dress was like real frilly and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's like, think about it. Like, so we had to explain to her, what is a princess? What does that actually mean? Like, to say you look like a princess, you can put on a dress. That doesn't make you a princess. Now she's thinking, I look like a princess because that's a princess apparently, and I look like that, so I look like a princess. But not realizing what does princess mean in that particular moment, right? So how many children are being manipulated like that? Another one is like with war, right? We do that with kids. Like the boy wants to look like the soldier, the girl wants to look like the princess. You know? Bye, Mitch. I think I had to go for a second.
Yeah, like it's funny because what does a princess actually look like? You look at Prince Charles's kids or whatever, they look like school children. They're dressed like school children. They don't wear those pink frilly dresses and shit like that.
Oh,
And
yeah, true.
it's funny because like they look like normal kids. I mean, they are, right? But they have this title of prince or princess or whatever. And there's a lot that goes into it. Like for them, they have to like I saw this video that was like kind of like circulating around in YouTube in the shorts. And the title of it was like, she looks so happy when I addressed her to shake her hand. And if you look at this kid, it's like, you know how kids have two smiles? They have the like, I'm genuinely happy smile. And then they have the, I just told you to smile. So smile, smile. Yeah. This like the video is this guy reaching his hand to shake this princess's hand. And she's like, I don't know, 7 or something like that. And like, she has on the like, turn and smile, like this is my job. And then she immediately turns away and goes off. And it's just like, dude, that's something she's been trained to do.
But also imagine from her perspective growing up as that.
Mm-hmm.
And like people are like, oh my God, you're special, you're a princess, and like participating, like you're fucking that kid over, man.
Yeah.
Like not only the parents and everybody, but the people participate. And like imagine her looking at these people going, these are like animals, these are idiots, these are like, because she's gonna be at her home seeing that her parents are normal people.
Yeah.
And then she's like, these people must be like inferior, that they would grovel and like be excited. I'm just a person.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I know they're not programmed that way, but it's like how but I mean, think about it. That wouldn't exist if people weren't constantly impulsed with it.
You know, it wouldn't exist if poverty didn't exist.
Yeah.
You know, like that's why poverty is necessary for this system to exist. Because then it's like everybody would like, how could you get somebody to do some laborious job that is like absolutely worth nothing? You know, like you used to always bring up the example of like, you're sitting in the chip factory and literally your job is just to press a button. I don't know, it releases chips, whatever. There's thousands of different flavors, whatever. But like, your life has no fucking meaning. You're like that. There's this clip from the Rick and Morty, the cartoon, and he creates this AI that serves butter. And he creates it, it's on the table, and he's like, what is my purpose? He's like, you serve butter. And he looks around, he's like, but what is my purpose? Like, you serve butter. And he's just like,
that's your entire existence.
Yeah. Yeah. But literally, that's essentially what we have, this beautiful machinery as in our bodies, and this intelligence that we have so much potential with. And we're literally telling people, fucking push the button I tell you to push when I tell you to push it, and don't fucking do anything else. And that's it. That's your fucking existence. And I will pay you, and that's it. And you'll be happy about it, because otherwise I will fire you and you will live on the fucking dirt.
And you won't even be able to exist.
Right.
So it's like constantly a fear of not existing instead of like a desire to actually do something. Hey, I want to share these points with you guys real quick. So Carol, I'll just let me share my screen real quick. How about that?
Oh, you need
No,
permission.
I got it. I'm just
Okay.
checking how I wanted. Oh, I think I can share multiple at once. See if this works. You probably won't see them all at once, but I'll be able to show you. Like if I
Yeah.
move this, you can see the one behind it, right? Or next to it.
Yeah, it's just a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, it's fine, but you
Just
can
be
see
aware
them.
of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll just give you context. Okay, so so this is a picture of Max. I bought him. This is it's by Robert Kiyosaki. It's like basically it's called Escape the Rat Race. It's a comic book, right? And actually, I was going to read it first because like it's a comic book. So I was like, I don't really know if it's gonna be, if it's gonna be appropriate or whatever. But what the kids do is anytime the UPS truck comes, they'll run outside and they'll get all the packages from the UPS driver and they'll start opening everything before we can even get it. So, anyways, he was like, oh, look, there's a book here. So he's like already read the book completely by the time I realized he even had it. Okay. And then that day he had already read it twice. And it, and the UPS comes at like 4 or 5. Right. So before he went to bed, he already read the book twice and he's reading it. He's still reading it. And so it's called Escape the Rat Race. Okay. So I'll come back to that in a second. Here he is last night. So this is the first picture I showed you was probably like, I remember I sent you guys a text, right? So it must have been like
3 or
couple
4
days
days ago.
right, not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
So then he wants to play cash flow. Remember we used to play cash flow a lot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I talked to you guys about that. So now we hadn't played it in a while. Primarily that was because like Caius was born, so we had a lot more focus on, kind of like managing things with the baby and all that stuff. So we didn't spend as much time as like just like playing games that we used to. So now things are a lot more stable with Caius. He's like older now, obviously. And so we have more time for that, like in the evenings and so forth. Because normally we would just go in the bedroom and read and play and stuff, but we're doing some more like board games. So anyways, but he's got this book and now this is him reading the manual over on the other picture, him reading the manual for the cash flow game by Robert Kiyosaki, right? Which for those of you who don't know, Robert Kiyosaki made the cash flow game to teach people how to escape the rat race, meaning to go from their job to eventually being financially free. And he couldn't sell it. So then he wrote a brochure or a pamphlet talking about why you need to do that to learn these things. And then that became eventually Rich Dad Poor Dad, the book, which became huge. And he made all this money with that. But he originally made it to sell the board game, right? So the board game is like kind of in a way teaching you how to think a little bit differently about money and business and investing and so forth outside of just having a job. So anyways, this is Max. Like we're having dinner last night. We're having breakfast for dinner outside and he's bringing this with him. And like, I came out there to bring some food out and he's already sitting there reading. Like we're not telling him to read it. Like he's just bringing stuff to read with him. Right. So he's reading like the glossary and the rules. Okay. So that's that. And then this is us that same night because he's wearing the same shirt because he's like, because I had like, he was like, let's play cash flow. Let's play cash flow. And I'm like, well, I have things I'm doing right now. And eventually I was like, well, we'll pay it after dinner. So he's like, already got it out. He already set everything up. And he's like, it's time to play cash flow. And I think actually this is the second night in a row we played because we took a break last night and then we picked it back up the next night. So he's playing cash flow there. That's him doing his turn. And see, he's using the gray cheese because we lost all the other pieces. So he's using cheese as a piece. And then here's his what do you call these things?
His income statement.
Yeah, but there's like a name for the whole page, whatever it is. It's like the little page you get as a player, like your character sheet or whatever.
Yeah.
This is his sheet. I'm just doing the writing for him because it's easier for me to write it quickly to not slow the game.
He's a
down if you
truck
read it.
driver.
Yeah, he chose the truck driver. I was the police officer. You can't really see mine over here. Right. And I wasn't even close to getting out of the rat race. He was already out. So that's why I circled like his passive income was higher than his total expenses. He makes all the decisions himself. All I'm doing is writing everything down for him. So it just doesn't take as long. But we do the calculations together. When he needs to take out a loan for something, he figures that out. If he wants to take out a loan, what's the interest payment going to be? Because it's like if you could take out loans of $1,000 and then you have to pay a loan payment each on your expense sheet of 10%, which is so it'd be 100. So here he's got a $6,000 loan here. You can see it here. Can you see my cursor when I do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then he's got his loan payment 600, right? So you add all that up. And it says like, I think it says like 2120 because you do a lot of erasing and stuff. So it's hard to see it with the picture I took because there's a glare. But he's got like 2,500 passive income, 2,100 expenses, right? So he was out of the rat race. And then you go to a different part of the game. So you see this inner circle here. That's when you're going around, you have a job, you do business and investments so that your passive income eventually gets higher than your total expenses. And then you go on this outer track of the game. And then it's like you take whatever your passive income is, you round it to the nearest 1,000, you multiply it by 100, and that becomes your new paycheck every time you get past one of these cash flow days. So now he's getting $260,000 every time he passes one. On mine, I'm still making like $700 as police officer or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm still stuck in here, right? But he's really good at it, man. Like he knows how to do the deals, right? And so I just wanted to show some context. So he got that little comic book, right? Because and the reason why I wanted to give him the comic book, and of course I was going to read it first, so I wouldn't just buy it for him just because it's for kids, but I got it because I was going to read it and give it to him if it was cool, instead of just giving him Rich Dad Poor Dad. And the only reason why is because I knew that a lot of the context he wouldn't have yet. So it'd be very unlikely without all, because like if the guy's talking about, you know, I'm trying to think of an example, like something we would take for granted. Like if he says something about federal interest rates, like he would say it in the context of the book, and we would kind of, he was assuming we have that context, but Max wouldn't have any of that context. So it would probably not be interesting quite yet. It doesn't have all that context. So I was like, well, let's see what's in the kid's book. And then once he has enough context, he can read this book, and he can read it right now if he wants to, right? So, so he's had that comic book for a few days, and the first day he gets it and he's reading it, and he's just like sitting there reading, like I showed you in that picture. And he comes up to me and he goes, Cameron, something in this book is not right. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, well, it's impulsing that you should go to school. And I was like, really? I'm like, that's weird. I wouldn't expect that. Right. So I was like, can you explain it? So he shows me the book and he tells me about it. And right. And he's like, basically in the beginning of the book, it's like these two rats and a turtle and they're friends. And the two rats are like going on roller coaster rides, and the turtle has to stop because he doesn't have enough money. And he's like, feels down about it. And he's like talking to the rat. And he's like, why aren't you coming? And he's like, well, I don't have enough money. And he's like, so I'm going to go get a job so I can get money like you. And he's like, the rat laughs at him. He's like, well, getting a job isn't the solution, right? To get rich. And he's like, yeah, but you had a job this summer. He's like, yeah, but I realized from it, no matter how hard I worked, I never had enough. So the rat's trying to tell him, like, the job isn't the answer. He's like, you need to learn how to build a business. Because I haven't read all of it, so I don't know if the rat has a business or whatever. But they're like kids, right? And the turtle is like, oh, so he's like kind of coming along with the guy. So it's kind of like the rich dad in a sense, but it's like his friend, right? And so he's like, oh, okay. And then there's this one part where he's like, you know, you need to learn about financial intelligence. And the turtle's like, oh, that sounds like really complicated and kind of boring, you know? And he's like, you know, that sounds like kind of boring. He's like, well, no, you have to learn about it if you want to be wealthy and so forth. And it's actually pretty interesting. It's not like school. It's when you're learning about this stuff, it's not like when you're learning stuff in school. It's a very different type of learning and information. And the turtle's like, oh. And he's like, so I don't need to go to school then. And the rat goes, well, hold on. Like, school teaches you some things. It's just not everything you need. Right. And that was the part where Max was like, something's not right. They're impulsing you that you should go to school. So he's telling me about it. And so we talked about it. And I was like, well, who do you think this book is for? Like, who do you think Robert Kiyosaki is selling this book to? And Max goes, well, parents that have kids in school. And I'm like, so if he wrote a book that made the kid think you should just stop going to school, would the parents want to buy it? Because do they really fully understand all of this? He's like, no. So he could use discernment and see, okay, because I said, what exactly does school teach you that you need to know? Does it tell you in the book, or does it just say that? And he's like, yeah, there is nothing that you need to know. I'm like, anything you need that you're learning in school, couldn't you just learn it from a book? He's like, yeah. I'm like, so what does school, because he knows like what school is. Like, we've been clear with him about it. We're not deceiving him. Like, oh, it's satanic evil. You just tell him what it is. And it's like, do you want to sit in a room for mostly hours at a time and just listen to somebody talk or them teach you things that you could have already read? Like that, like Max already read that whole book twice. So rather than me put him in school, a school that teaches him that, how fast are they going to go? He can read this thing, right?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Jay?
What's funny is I read Rich Dad Poor Dad when I was in like 10th grade, somewhere around there. And my first immediate thought was like, I need to drop out of school. I need to get out of this place. And
because he doesn't agree with school. And I've heard Robert
Right.
Kiyosaki talk. Because I
Right.
was like, well, that's weird because I know he doesn't agree with school.
Right.
Like, so something, but then we talked about it, right?
so as soon as I read it and I was like, oh, I need to drop out of school. I told my mom and my dad, and then everyone around me was basically like, you need to stay in school. You're not allowed to drop out. And I was
Right.
like, oh, okay, well then what the fuck am I reading this book for?
Well, so okay, so we're reading this book, right? And then I remember it was like this morning or something. I'll come back to the story in a second, but I remember he said to me this morning, he was like, it's also impulsing people to get jobs, or to have a job. He was like, it's teaching you. Oh, and we were talking about it too, because we were playing cash flow. And I was like, I said, part of the problem with the cash flow game is it teaches you to have a job and to use that money to invest. And then you're going to get out of your job. And I was like, but that's not what Robert Kiyosaki did, Max. You have to understand, he didn't do that. Like, he's selling something to people with jobs. So they're already in jobs. He's trying to help them get out of that. And I said to him a lot of reasons why that won't work, because they can't build the vocabulary effectively. And they're not spending any time doing their thing outside of their job. So it doesn't really work for most people because they don't know how to reprogram themselves to think differently. Right. And we were talking about that. And I said, and I told him the story about what Robert Kiyosaki actually did. Like, he had a company, and I remember at one point he like sold these like neon nylon wallets that were really popular when I was growing up. And he sold these and got them in stores, and he made money, and then he put that into real estate. And then he put that into like his business of selling like this information. So I was like, he had businesses that he used to become an investor, and he worked in his business initially like he was self-employed. So I told Max, I'm like, do you know about the 4 quadrants? And he was like, no, because I don't know if that's in the book, or maybe it is, but they don't talk about it in the same way, right? So I was like, it's ESBI, and I told him about that, right? And I explained to him, I was like, it's like you have ESBI, and most people try to go from E straight to I. And I was like, that's like trying to spell the word BALL, and you just go BL. And he starts laughing. I'm like, you can't skip the letters, right? And I said, now you can go from E to S. You could just go right to S. You could build a business, but you can't skip from E to I. It doesn't work like that, because you have to, it's like there's a process, right? And then I explained to him, I told him about Warren Buffett. And I said to him, Max, I said, you know, what's fascinating is you're learning about all this stuff right now. You're not even 6 years old. You'll be 6 tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
And I said, do you know who Warren Buffett is? He's like, he didn't know, right? And I said, he was one time the richest man in the world. He's still alive. He's still very rich, like worth billions and billions of dollars. And I said, Elon Musk, richest man in the world apparently right now, right? Jeff Bezos, he was the richest man in the world, right? He did Amazon. I was telling back those people. And I said, do you know how Warren Buffett made all his money? And I said, you know, when he was 12 years old, he had already read all the books in the library about making money in his library in his town. And I said, but you're learning all this stuff already. And he didn't have Robert Kiyosaki to teach him the basics and stuff. He had to figure it out, right? And I said, but do you know how he got started? I said, when he was like 9 years old, he had his own business. And then I told him the story about how they went to the racetrack with his grandpa or whoever.
Yeah.
And then he found those tickets.
Yeah.
Right. And so I told him that whole story, and then he got other kids to do it. And I said, initially he figured out all this stuff, but then he realized to go to the level of business, he would just use his words and persuade other people to do it. Right. And then that would make him money. So now he had a business, and you could see his eyes like lighting up. Right. And I said, so you can go straight to business. I'm like, you don't have to get a job to make money. If you have a business, you can literally just talk, and then you can sell something. Because I'm thinking, you have these kids who are thinking, oh, if I go get a summer job, right, I can make some money and I can use that money to do something, right? But couldn't the same kid, okay, just go to 5 kids and go, you guys want jobs, right? Yeah, okay. I'm going to go sell people on us doing their lawns for them. You guys are going to do the work, and I'll handle all the money and collect all of it. Like, the kid who has the high vocabulary would do that. They wouldn't go, well, let me go mow lawns all summer.
Right.
Right. And that's, I think, in the book, what probably happens. I haven't read it like I was saying yet. But obviously that kid in the book realized if I just mow lawns, I'm not going to have enough money. So I think he probably creates a business. I'm assuming I still have time to, or I have to take the time to read it, but to find out what he exactly does. But clearly he builds some kind of business that gives him money, right? And so we're just like, the conversation we're having this morning while I'm playing with Caius on the floor and Kitty's out milking the cow.
That's cool.
Right. And it was really cool because I was showing him like, you don't ever have to get a job. Like the moment you think you want to get a job, why don't you just figure out a way to sell something? Sell TechnoTutor, but you could sell something, you know what I mean? You could build a business, just go persuade, right? And I was telling him how a lot of people don't like people like Bill Gates. And I was telling him that story about how like in the book, Hard Drive, it talks about his favorite thing to say to people in the hallway if it didn't like something they said was just, that's the stupidest fucking thing I ever heard, right?
Yeah.
And I said, the problem is if you use that expression all the time, is it effective? He said, no. And I said, so sometimes that expression can be effective of like being aggressive or what people might say is mean or something. I said, but if you're always doing that, is that effective? He's like, no. And I said, now understand. I said, what is Bill Gates doing now? Do you know? Because we talked about how he made all this money with Microsoft. I told him how he was in school, right? He was at Harvard, like the best school in the world, right? And then his friend from school, from middle school, whatever, came and said, hey, remember that software stuff we were doing? Let's do that because all these companies need software and we're the only ones who know how to do it. And Bill Gates was like, yeah, fuck this school thing. I'm out of here. And I told him like his parents' reaction and everything. I was like, but he built a business. And Max was like, that makes sense, right? And I said, but do you know what he's doing now? And Max like, what? I'm like, he's pushing all of the vaccine stuff. He's doing all that artificial meat. Max is like, wow. And I said, so look, Max, I said, you have to make a choice within yourself of whether you're going to make a lot of money in this world by doing something evil and being evil, or are you going to do it in a way that's best for everybody, right? But either way, I know for a fact you're going to become very wealthy. You're going to be, I wouldn't be surprised if you're going to be the richest person ever in the world, right? You can do that. I know you can, right? And that's like how he's thinking about things, right? Because he's looking at it as he's getting the principles instilled of like, but do it in a way that's best. Actually consider all these points. So you build context, you build understanding, right? So it's really cool because we're, like, oh, and then the conclusion of that story is this morning, I was like, do you want me to get a copy of Rich Dad Poor Dad? Because I can't find my copy. Maybe it's here actually somewhere. I'm not sure. But I wasn't like in the bookshelf at home for some reason. It might be in a box. But I was like, do you want me to get a copy for you? Like the actual one, and you can start reading it. He was like, yeah. So I was like, okay, cool. I'll get you one, right? Because when I told him about the quadrants and everything, he's like, oh, because he thinks mathematically. He's like, oh, there's a quadrant. There's letters. I like that. You know what I mean? So there was like, I can handle that, right? But now he has some of the basic context. Oh, and that was the other thing I wanted to add to it. I was in the bathroom the other day. He comes in there and he's randomly goes, hey, Cameron, assets, it's basically like money growing on a tree. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, where did you learn that? He's like, that book. Right. And I was like, that's really cool. I was like, did you learn anything about liabilities yet? And he goes, yeah, that's just money down the drain. Right. And I'm like, wow, like that's after just reading that book for a day. He's coming to me and telling me these things. Right. I mean, not even 6 yet. And he's sitting here he knows more about liabilities, assets. Do you see what I'm saying? Right. Yeah. And if you ask him now, hey, Max, are liabilities bad? He's going to say, no, you just have to build an asset that pays for it. Like he knows that now.
That's cool.
You understand? And so he's like, oh, our business is an asset. I get it. You see that? And so we were talking, for example, about how we're going to have this event, guys, coming up in less than a month now, right here in Texas for TechnoTutor distributors. And I was saying, like, that's what you want to support all the distributors to really stay focused on, is building the business. That's their asset, right? That's the point of it, right? So it's just really cool because I was like, you could just play and have fun and do whatever you want, Max. But if you also want to build your business, then just support people with that point. That's the point of being a leader, of being a salesperson and so forth, right? So he's getting that education like early on. Because I told him, like, people like Warren Buffett and like Bill Gates or Elon Musk, they were just kind of, they had some really effective programming, but they're kind of figuring it out. No one was really directly supporting them, right? It's kind of like you can make a child a chess genius. Why can't you make them a business genius?
Yeah.
I have some other things I want to share, but it's not apropos to this point. So
well,
what do you guys think?
Here's a
about
question.
that?
Like, so I have had many conversations with other people, either in TechnoTutor as just they use the product, or they're a distributor already. And it's fascinating because there'll be some people that are still like pretty new to business. They're pretty hard. They had pretty fucked programming growing up. And so then they'll ask me, they'll be like, wow, like Max is so amazing. Like, dude, I honestly think he's smarter than me in some aspects, like with math and stuff. I'm like, yeah, and then they'll either go into a point of like inferiority or equality and realize, oh, I have the same tools. I can figure it out too. And wow, think of all the cool stuff I could do with Max. I could maybe teach him about this. He could teach me about this. Then I have even other guys that are like already business, like really good in business in specific aspects, like sales or marketing, or they already have a business of their own or things like that. And even them, I was talking to one guy last week or 2 weeks ago. He goes, dude, that like Max is insanely smart. And he's got 2 kids of his own. So he's like, oh, cool. Like I'm going to have my kids be smart too. But the question is, because I'm sure most people in Self-Perfected listening to this have this on their mind of like, what is then the best way to then think about having a relationship with Max? Because anyone in this community, if they're very determined, they become a distributor, that kind of thing, how to now like interact with him and these other techno tutor kids, because some people will go into that inferiority point or not even realize, oh, I have techno tutor. I can become fucking smart as well and now build, like how do you address that?
So when you're saying in relationship, you just mean in the context of how they see themselves in relation to him?
Basically, yeah.
Okay. Versus like building a friendship with him. I'm just clarifying the definition of that word.
Or more so just like, how do you address the point within people and how their mind will then react to the fact that there's a 6-year-old that's smarter than me in various aspects? Like how can you support someone to then really see the greatness of that instead of going to some bullshit? Oh, Max is just amazing.
It's like,
I guess he'll solve the problem.
would you like to become wealthy by supporting other people to do that with their kids?
Yeah, heck yeah.
Like I'm never going to be as smart at my age right now as Max will be when he's my age.
Yeah,
it doesn't bother me. It's like, it's kind of like, it'd be like, it's like being upset that I'm not going to have the technology that people have 100 years from now. It's like, I'm glad. I'm glad. I'm a part of making that possible. Right? Am I a lot smarter? Like night and day than what before I was started using TechnoTutor and doing the process that we talked about? 100%. Like it's I've changed as a person. I'm still in that process, but what I'm saying is like, I've seen the result for me. So the idea that I think people might go into a point where it's like, well, I'm not doing it since I was a young kid, so I can never have that. And it's like, I'm not going to limit you and be like, nope, you can never get as smart as you want to get. But does it really matter? Remember we talked about responsibility? It's like, what's your responsibility? Get as smart as you need to get to do the things you want to do and solve. Don't make it a comparison of like I'm never going to be a fucking, I could start practicing right now. I'm not going to be as good as Michael Jordan.
I mean,
do you understand? But like, what does that matter to me?
Yeah.
Can I get a lot better? Now, obviously, from my perspective, basketball is a very little value as a thing, as it to be your whole purpose of being. Okay. So it's not even something I would focus on, but I'm here to solve problems. I just need to be as good as I need to be to support you, Mitch. Right? You need to be as good as you need to be to support the people that you work with, or your child, or your wife. Right? You don't need to be. So it's like we're paving the way for future generations to take on problems that we could not take on. So we don't need to go into a comparison. And also at the same time, I'm not going to limit any one individual and be like, oh yeah, you're just never going to be that smart. Like, I don't know what's possible for that person. It's a matter of dedication and discipline, but it's also a matter of time. And also, if they're honest with themselves, it's simply because of consequence. Mm-hmm. So it is consequence. Like, self-forgiveness is there to support us to deal with the consequence. So you have a consequence. You could say like, well, I mean, what's the point? I'm just not going to do anything then because I'm not going to be ever as smart as Max is. Well, first of all, you don't know that. But second of all, let's just say you don't have enough time and you're older. So it's not going to happen. Can you improve? Can you get better? And can you do what you need to do while you're here? That's the key. So that's how I would look at it within myself. I'm not jealous of Max. Do you understand? Like, because I could literally do the same thing. He is going to be smarter when he's my age than I am when I was 16. Wait. Let me, how do I clarify that? He's gonna be smarter when he's
The other way.
16 than
Right.
I am now. Okay, let me put it that way. That's what I'm trying to say. Right.
Yeah.
And then imagine
I
with
can't even
Caius
fucking get that
and
straight,
Seneca.
okay?
Like I was
And
I
then-
was just thinking of
Holy
this myself because
shit, wow.
like you know, when I went to your place all those years ago and I saw Max, like I think he had just turned 2. And I was just like, oh shit, like this kid is definitely 100% going to be way smarter in the next couple years than any kid.
You can see the
Yeah, I could already see it then because I had the access to that information, to that data.
now.
Right.
What's really cool, I just want to add this point in, is with Seneca, because you haven't spent sometime. I mean, I'm not saying anybody else perceives it the way. I don't necessarily know how other people perceive it, but like I tend to emphasize Max more than Seneca. And it's not because I think he's better than her or special. It's just because he's like the leading edge of
Right.
showing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And in many ways, Seneca is, it's like, look, my 3-year-old can read. And it's like, well, yeah, we already did that. So that doesn't in any way diminish Seneca, my daughter, or Caius, he's still a baby. It's just, I know people want to see. Now, we still show what Seneca's doing. It's just sometimes if anyone might feel like, well, how come you don't talk about her as much? It's not that I don't see them as equally valuable. It's just that we're trying to show people as quickly as possible, this is what can happen. This is what you can do. This is what you can do. And it's like,
Yeah.
do you want me to do it twice? Do I need to do it twice and show you it twice? I did it once. I mean, yes, we're also showing it twice, right? So that's the only reason why that occurs. But just to show you something, and I brought this up because obviously when you guys come over and you see Seneca knows the alphabet, I'm not saying you're not impressed, but it's not the same as the first time you saw Max do it. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, well, yeah, of course Seneca can do it. Do you know what I mean? It's like a different thing. Because when you saw Max, it wasn't like of course he could do it. You're like, oh shit, he can actually do that.
It was
They're not
mind-blowing.
fucking lying. They're not pretending.
That's exactly how I felt. It was just like, oh, you're not lying. Like I thought,
Like this is real.
It
They're
wasn't
not
that I
just
thought
putting a video where it seems like he's doing it. Yeah.
and it wasn't that I thought that you were lying because you didn't even
Okay.
have really videos at that time necessarily. It was just like
We had a few, but not, yeah.
I wasn't
But it-
watching them.
Well, okay, yeah.
Like I think you had sent me one video, and I was just like, interesting. But
But we didn't have the same relationship we have now either.
definitely not.
yeah.
And also like it was just this point within me that like I've been around so many parents and they're always saying their kid knows the alphabet and they really just mean they can sing the alphabet song. And when they get to MNLP, that's how they do it. And it's like, that was my like, okay, yeah, I get what you're saying. He knows the alphabet. Sure. Let me go over there and really test it. But so it was really mind blowing for sure.
And there's that famous video that we have, right? Where it's like Max, like he's like 2 years old and you're showing the letters. Like I wasn't even involved with that video. That was just you going like, I'm going to test this and make some videos and see.
That's
show
literally
people.
what I was doing. It was just like, let me test this shit
Remember, he's
out.
like 2 years old and you're like, show him and he's like 17. You're
Yeah,
like, "Ah."
that's my favorite part. I was like, what the fuck? Because he's in his diapers, he's got the Wu-Tang shirt on. It's so cute.
Yeah.
And like you didn't even know I was making that video because you were talking with I think probably with Katie over like in the background and whatnot. And yeah, anyway, I think it might have even been just before he turned 2. I don't know. But anyway,
It was. I think it was right before his second birthday.
yeah.
Yeah. Because I remember I saw that. I think it was like October 11th or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was his birthday was the 24th. I want to add this real quick. So the thing about Seneca is she can fucking read, man. Like in some ways, it's faster than Max, even though she didn't show obvious like expression of it. Like, because we have videos of him reading, like full on reading before he was even 3.
Yeah.
And we didn't really get those videos of Seneca until right after she turned 3. So in some ways, if you were just kind of like looking through like our history, you might think, oh, she started later, but her acceleration is happening faster. And I think part of that is due to her being a female, but also part of it is due to her having him and more stability even within us and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that necessarily means she's going to learn math faster and go faster and all that. I'm just saying at this point where she's at, she's like going faster than where he was at when he was her age.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But there are differences. You can see there's the male female differences and so forth, right? What was the point I was going to make? Okay, but she can read. Like when Katie's driving around with the kids, like she's like reading everything. And the other day, so remember that picture I showed you where he was reading that instruction manual out on that picnic table? You couldn't really tell it was a picnic table, but that's what it was. So we were outside in the front yard, right? And then over the past week, I planted like 12 fruit trees in our front part of our property, right? So in that, where that table is at in the front yard, there's like a big field, and then there's like a bunch of fruit trees, like kind of off in the distance, not super far away, but maybe like, I don't know, 50, 100 yards away. Okay. Like off in like the distance a little bit. And you can see them compared to all the other trees that are very obviously like little tiny young trees, right? And so we were sitting out there, right? And the kids, like we had just finished eating, and the kids are like running around and just being crazy, right? Being silly. And I was like, and they wanted to run around, and I go, okay, who can find, because I saw they were over there near the trees, and I go, who can find a nectarine tree? Because I left the little tags on the trees, right? And it'll say like what type of nectarine, like I don't remember the names, but there's a type of peach called a flame prince, and there's one like a pear tree called an Ayers pear. We have a Warren pear. There's different breeds of that type of tree. So they still have their tags on them, right? And they're just running around, and I go, who can find the avocado tree, right? And so they were next to us, right? And then they both run off in different directions, right? And Seneca runs over to like a peach tree, and you see her look at the tag, and then you see her like go off to another tree, and then she starts running towards the avocado tree, right? And I go, watch, she's gonna know it. And she looks at the tag, and she's like I said, like 100 yards away, right? And she goes, I found it, like that. It was so funny the way she did it. She was like, she did it even longer than I did, right?
Yeah.
And it's because it says avocado on it.
Yeah.
Right. And then I go, okay, can you find the plum tree? Which is, I know, on the other side. Right. So she's just zigzagging, running out. And then finally she gets over there, and she says, I found it, like she can fucking read the tags.
Yeah.
And they're not color coded like plum purple or something, I mean, it's like orange or whatever. Right. And then like when she found the Satsuma tree, she was like, this is Satsuma, and like, I mean, she just turned 4 at the beginning of this month, October, right? And she can read plum, avocado, I mean, these are not the only words she can read, but she can read. She'll pick up the Narnia books for anybody who's read Narnia, and she'll just start reading it, and she'll read it out loud.
That's so cool.
Right. So it's like at this stage, it seems unimpressive, because it's like just a replication of what we've done, but it's by objective measurements, it's insane. Like it's cool. Impossible. It's like, and somebody says, oh, I had a good reader and my kid read early, but my other kid never liked to read. Well, that hasn't been a problem.
Right.
1, 2, and then we're going to do it with 3. I have no doubt whatsoever 3 is going to be the same, because when something is a part of you, you want to do it. That's why kids like Disney. You know why? Because you fucking impulsed it with them. You put it in there, you had them watch it, it impulsed, right? It became a part of their memory structure. It became a part of the way their mind works. And now it's like their mind just thinks in those terms. It thinks about those things. Those images come up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like
this is so funny, because someone listening, it's like, here's the question now. Do you want your kids, or if you can't have kids, you want your neighbor's kids or whatever, to then have within them princess magic and Sesame Street and weird fucking drama? Or do you want them to have Rich Dad Poor Dad, understanding assets, understanding how to build a business?
Okay,
like,
but Mitch, somebody's gonna hear you say that, and they're gonna be like, "Well, I'll just read Rich Dad Poor Dad to my kid all the time," and it's like they don't understand. Like, behind it is like the ability to actually process that information.
Right? Because the child doesn't have the vocabulary.
I'm not reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to Max.
Right.
Like he's reading the book himself. He's thinking about these points himself. He's asking me to pay cash flow. I'm not asking him to play. Like,
What's funny is like just from watching Max over these years, like I can tell by the time he's 12, he'll know math as good as I know math. And like I know math, I tutor math. He'll know math as good as I do, if not better, by the time he's
Dude.
12.
dude, he goes the other day, he asked me, what's 39 times 2? Because he was trying to do something. No. He said, what's 39 times 20?
Okay.
Okay. He was trying to do something. I don't know why he wanted to know that.
Yeah.
Oh, because he got 20 of those $20 bills from the cash flow game.
Okay.
And he was like trying to figure out how much money he had. He had 39 of them, right? And he goes, what's 39 times 20? And I go, well, what's 39 times 2? And he goes, this is what he does. I'm trying to do it like a real time. Like, this is how quickly he did it. He goes, well, 30 times 2 is 60. 2 times 9 is 18. So 78. And I have to add a 0, 780. Like, do you think most adults could do that?
No.
I mean, like, again, it's one of those things where like, I know I can fucking do that. You know, it's like you're a math tutor, right, Drake? You know what I'm talking about. You're like, that's not hard.
Right.
But you also know most people would be like 39 times 20. And they'd probably immediately go into an anxiety and not actually even try to solve it. He doesn't go into the anxiety because it's like, okay, I could do that. And he all in his mind, like he's not writing anything down. I mean, I sent that video where we went like progressively harder and harder math stuff to where he was doing algebra equations in his mind, right?
Yeah.
Right. And that's what he does. And then the other day, it was last night, I think. He was trying to figure out how much money he had, right? And he's got all these different like random bills in like a random order. So he's like putting them down. He's like, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I've got 700. Okay, so now I have 50. Okay, 750. Okay, I've got 2 20s. Okay, that's 790. Okay, I have a 3 10s. Okay, so 790. Okay, 820. 820. Like he's like just doing the counting, like the numbers and adding them together, like right there, like no problem, no hesitation. I mean, it was like the number ended up being like 11 or 1,170 or something, whatever it was, of all different bills. And he's just like counting them up, like no problem, no hesitation whatsoever. Right. And also he's learning how to break things down into smaller units, like those math problems, like the way he did them. Right. Katie asked him the other day to do 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 all the way up to 4096, which I think he did on that video also, actually, right? Like that's like no problem for him, right?
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And now I'm working with Seneca on, because the same thing we did with him, once they have the numbers in with TechnoTutor, and this is the other thing, remember I was saying I'm not reading Rich Dad Poor Dad to him, meaning he can read it. It's coming from him. And everybody, this is the big unschooling thing. It's like, well, when my kid shows an interest, then I'll teach them that. Not realizing that they'll show an interest based on the impulses that are put into them. So it's a point that parents miss. It's like, do you know I don't even know the kids' names. Like, what's like the little prince in England? Like one of the little boys. Don't they have like a boy? I actually don't know his name. I know there's Charlotte. That's like the girl, right?
Okay.
There's like a boy one, Prince Charles, George. I don't know. I think it's George or something, whatever.
Okay.
This little Prince George, do you think he's going to have an interest in perhaps running a castle, or doing investments because he's being impulse with that shit? Do you know what I mean?
Versus, do you think he's going to have an interest in mermaids? I think he's going to have a strong
But my point
interest.
is like, he's not going to have an interest he's going to have an interest in those things because that's his environment.
Yeah.
So, Katie was showing me this picture. She found out recently. I actually knew this already, but I didn't make a thing of it. But like, I think we talked about it once about Alanis Morissette, because there was something I came across a while back where she like unschools her kids. So it's like, it's a part of use to like promote unschooling. And she wrote some post about it of like, it's about, teaching your kids about, following that desire, like that interest, that curiosity, it was like this emotional bullshit post. And like literally the picture, it was like on Instagram, and literally the picture was her and her kids like walking, and there was like a private jet in the background, right? Because she was going to do her concert at like New York Times Square or something, right?
Isn't it ironic?
And Katie was like, but that's their desires, that's what they're impulsed with. So their kids just gonna desire this stuff naturally. Like they're being impulsed in a totally different. Someone who's Now, still unschooling is going to fuck them over because they're not going to teach the kids to read properly. But they're being impulsed with totally different points. And so children don't come with intrinsic, like a boy might be hardwired to be more interested in mathematical type logical reasoning. And a girl might be more hardwired to be more expressive, maybe with her body, let's just say. Okay. But even that, it's like, and I'm not saying boys and girls can't be interswitched. I'm just giving it as an example. But that girl does not have an intrinsic interest in ballet. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
She has an intrinsic. Seneca likes ballet because she would like to dance. She liked to move around and was always moving her body and dancing and jumping around. So I was like, she might be interested in dance. So then we showed her dance and we showed her ballet. So she's interested in ballet now because we've put that into her environment. Not because she just was born liking ballet. If I had shown her hip hop dancing, she'd be doing that.
Why
You see the
didn't you
difference?
show her hip hop dancing? Come
Well,
on.
I'll tell you why. Because I'm always on YouTube going like, I want to show her other types of dance, but it's always some fucking like song where it's like drink in the club, you know, and you're like, well, I'm definitely not fucking impulsing her with that, you know, or it's some love bullshit, or it's some. So it's like there's very few types of. Now, even then, though, Swan Lake, Sleeping Beauty, what are these stories?
Yeah.
Right. So we talk about it. You can't avoid it 100%. Right. So we show her ballet videos of people just showing the ballet movements. And then we show her ballet, but they're not, you know, watching a ballet doesn't impulse in the same way necessarily as watching the Disney movie Sleeping Beauty.
Yeah.
There's more time to process and understand what is the story here. And it's a little different. It doesn't justify the point, but it's like, then you have to take the responsibility of explaining and talking about what is the story? Why is it this way? Why do they have these costumes and so forth, right? So, but my point is like the idea that your children are just going to have these natural interests and that's going to spring forth and then you just teach them about it. That's not how it works. That's somebody. So imagine a parent going, well, I'm not qualified to teach my kids, so I'm just going to unschool them. Well, what qualifies you to think that unschooling is effective? What's their qualification on that? There is no qualification. So just because someone, let me be clear, just because teachers aren't qualified doesn't mean parents are qualified. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We're not just going, parents, the way you think right now, you're totally qualified to educate your kids. That would be unschooling.
Yeah.
In a way. We're not saying that. We're saying what qualifies us is because we have the tools that actually work with how children learn effectively. And we're implementing that with our kids. And then we're using common sense and self-honesty in the process of self-forgiveness and so forth to make sure we're not imposing and doing a bunch of abuse that our parents did and so forth. That's the qualification, is the tools. And it's doing the process properly. It's not just, I just have intrinsic authority and expertise and qualification as a parent because I'm a parent now. Some people can fall into that trap. It's like, oh, it's just, you know, it's like, it's similar to, it's the same mistake that women make when they're like, when they have a kid and they're like, I need to go back to work because, you know, it's just my choice. And it's like, is it your choice? Like, are you choosing it based on what is best? Or are you just choosing it based on what's your opinion? What's your impulse? So being a parent where you just go based on what's already in you and you just assume that, oh, the way you feel and everything's fine. That's not the same as going, okay, I actually need to dismantle this fucking mind control inside of me and actually learn how to educate my children for real, which is vocabulary, which is reading ability, which is math ability. That's the basics. So your kid's never going to come to you and be like, I want you to read to me Robert Kiyosaki, unless if they had the vocabulary built. Because think about how much math is involved in playing that cash flow game. If Max couldn't do basic math, he would get bored like that.
Yeah.
And I would think, oh, he's just not interested in it. He's interested in it because he has the basics and he wants to make money. He wants to buy things. He wants to build things. He wants to do things. He sees what money allows you to do. So he's like, I want to do this to learn how to do it. He understands the value of it. He has the vocabulary. So the mistake that parents make, though, is like, I'm just going to read to them and give them the vocabulary. It's not effective. I mean, I'm just telling you, like, I can't prove it to you other than look at our result. And I know how it works. But it's kind of like the person saying, how can I put it? It's like, I was talking with someone the other day, and they were like, how can I become really wealthy by building a business? Again, I won't go into the details of the conversation, but that was the essence of it. They're like, I don't understand how I can be wealthy by building this particular business. And I was like, well, what are you doing right now? And they were like working some job. And I'm like, so in 5 years, you're going to be doing that job? They're like, no. And I'm like, in 5 years, are any of the people that are doing that job with you going to be doing it? He's like, no. And I said, in 5 years, are you going to be a millionaire from doing it now? He's like, no. Are the other people that you're working with going to be? No. And I was like, guess who is going to be? He's like, who? I'm like, the guy who owns the business. So you're asking me how a particular business is going to make you wealthy, but you have an employee mindset. I can't prove to you in the frame of being an employee only how building a business is going to make you wealthy. If you're going to act like an employee, if you're going to want someone to give you the paycheck, if you're going to want someone to give you leads, that's always this biggest thing. People are like, well, I'll go to this thing because they're going to give me leads. I'm a salesperson. That's not a business. You're the fucking employee. If someone's giving you something, you're the employee. That's not a business. And I was talking with someone else the other day, and they were working this job, and it was like somebody give them the leads, right? And I was like, why don't you just fucking figure out how to get the leads yourself and then get other people to do it? I mean, I'm not encouraging to do that business, but I'm like, and he was like, well, that's what the guy figured out who I'm working for. I'm like, right. That's why you're an employee and he's the boss. I'm like, don't you get it? You're never going to solve the problem staying in the mindset you're in.
Yeah.
So like with parents, you're never going to stay in your kid's never going to be an entrepreneur by you reading a book to them. They're not going to become effective at reading simply by you reading to them, because now they're limited purely to your book that you're reading. That's not the effective way to learn words. I know you can find examples of people who did that, but they had other genetic propensities you're not aware of.
Yeah.
And their environmental structure where they were getting a vocabulary in ways you're not aware of. It wasn't just from those books. The reason why they read the books is because they had the vocabulary. They had environments and genetics, right? Look at Bill Gates. Was his parents poor?
By no stretch.
Like, give me a fucking break, man.
Yeah.
Like, give me a break, right? So with the kids, the focus is the vocabulary every day. Build the vocabulary, use technotutor. Everything else is addition. If somebody said to me, what's the most important thing your kid does? Next to the basics of drinking water, eating, right? But I'm talking about education wise. Is it reading to your kids? Is it giving them experiences? Is it, all these other things? It's using technotutor every day. That's the most important thing. Was it more important than reading? Well, okay. Read to your kids only then. Is that what you're saying? Am I saying only use technotutor? I'm saying do that. That's the most important thing. If you had to choose, I don't know why you have to choose. Why do you have to choose? You don't have to choose. But which is more important? Which is prior? Which is the fundamental point?
You know
because
why they have
my
to
kids
choose?
read because they use technotutor.
You know why they have to choose?
Because they're retarded?
Because they don't want to take the responsibility. You take the responsibility of telling me what I should do, and then I'll just do that or argue with you for me not taking
what
responsibility.
qualifies you to argue with me?
Yeah. The fact that I didn't want to take responsibility qualifies me to argue with you.
Hey, I want to share something else because I was talking about the feminist thing.
Yeah.
I just thought this was so funny, and I've been dying to bring it up. I gotta bring it up. Have you guys? So we're gonna switch gears for a second, if it's okay. Have you guys noticed this trend on Facebook, where it's women? I would say, I'm assuming every time they're single. I've never seen a married woman post this. They make these they're like these Facebook quizzes, and it's always like your name has a certain meaning.
Oh yeah.
Or it's like they look at their picture and it's like, this says something about you.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They're like Facebook quizzes, but it's like specifically geared towards women. I don't know why I always see them pop up.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share a couple.
Let's see them.
Please do.
Okay.
We're trying to target you, Cameron, just in case you turn into a woman. They want to make sure you're going to be.
Hold on, let me see if I can
properly.
share a specific portion.
Oh, okay. Have a dark meaning. What is yours? Okay.
Oh my
Ooh.
god.
I just don't want to put the person's name. That's why.
Yeah.
Okay, so all girls' names hold a fall meaning. This is about fall. Tara means
Just written by some fucking AI.
willow tree. Okay, independent leader, loves her family, hates.
Toxic narcissist.
Okay, but you're gonna see there's a theme here. Okay, now ready? I'm gonna scroll down.
Yeah.
Gentle side. I'm gonna go down.
Oh, we
Gentle
can't see
side.
gentle side. Oh, there we go. Okay.
She gives without a hidden agenda.
Mm.
Well, that's
Dark side.
bullshit.
Her anger is dangerous once her trust is broken.
That's
feel
funny. That's
that.
what they say about Scorpios.
Okay, now,
So-
no.
Gemini's.
Okay, I want to show you this theme though. Like, and I'm telling you every fucking time. And I just now that I'm seeing, I took screenshots because I was like, and this was like over like 3-week period. I took these different ones. Okay, does that make sense though? I'll come back to it in a second. Okay, so let me go over to this one. I love this one, by the way. Okay, are you
I've-
narcissist?
Definitely seen this one so many times.
Okay, I love this one though. It says, "Are you narcissist? Pick 3 colors." Now, what is the person thinking? This means?
That means
I'm not a narcissist.
Yeah.
Like to see if you're a narcissist.
I'm gonna-
But I'm looking at it as, are you a narcissist? Okay, play this game. Like, that's literally what it's fucking saying. Okay, are you a narcissist? Pick 3 colors. Okay, so you choose the 3 colors, right? One of you, can you see this? Can one of you read it? Maybe Christine.
10,000% empath and independent. You shouldn't be worried when Angela raises her voice because that means she still cares. It's her silence that you should fear. Angela is a woman who's hard to find and impossible to replace. She knows how to love with her whole heart. The way to win her heart is not through words, but actions. She is the kind of woman who notices every single detail, so don't ever try to take advantage of her kindness. Her trust is like glass. It will never be the same once it's broken. Remember that. She is both holy water and hellfire. The version you get, well, that would depend on how you treat her, so choose wisely.
Okay, look, let's go back to this one. She gives without a hidden
Yeah.
agenda, right? It's about narcissists. They got that
Uh,
keyword. And then
And the
don't break
trust.
her trust. It's like this, there's like this female ego point. It's like really specific, right? And we can maybe break it down. So I got one more to share, okay? All right, here's another one. All names have a dark meaning. What is yours? Okay. Look, hellfire temper. Okay. Right.
That's what Lynette means, really.
And then strength. Fights alone.
So-
Okay. It's always about being alone. Weakness. She helps without expecting anything in return.
Oh.
That's
She
such
gives with her
bullshit.
whole heart. Okay. Dark side. Her silence is her final warning.
I don't want her to be silent.
Look. It's her silence that you should fear.
Mm.
Mhm.
What is the okay? So I'll stop the share there, but I just wanted to like talk about this and break this down because I see it's like this trend, and it's every time it's about narcissism, it's about giving without expecting anything, and it's about don't break my trust, and you better treat me right because if you don't, I'll become crazy. It's this weird fucking yeah, it's like there's this ego point within females specifically, and that's why I always say, like, if you want to spot a narcissist, it's someone complaining about narcissists.
Mhm.
Because narcissist is like an over obsessive focus on yourself. Like if you have to post something that talks about how you give without a hidden agenda and all this stuff, like you're just narcissistic. And you're just projecting onto the person. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? It's just that's crazy, man.
I mean, I am not afraid of when a woman becomes quiet because that's what I prefer. It's just for them to be silent.
Her silence, you should fear her silence.
I'm,
When she
I'm just-
talks, you shouldn't fear her, but when she's silent. I mean,
When
I
she-
think there's truth to this, right? Christine,
Uh-huh.
maybe you can break it down as a female. Like when a woman's quiet, that must be mean she's like fucking plotting her revenge.
yeah,
for
or
3 months.
seething or something. I mean, it's funny because I used to be really into like astrology and stuff,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it just reminds me of that stuff.
It
It's
totally like the fake bullshit astrology where it's like it applies to fucking anybody is like,
right.
but even more so, it shows like how it strokes your ego, and it's like you're trying to brag about something, you know.
it's
and
funny.
this like feminist superiority though, where like it's like, this divine feminine or this like empowered female, strong independent woman type thing, like this archetype that's like everyone wants to like build up now, and it's like that women are doing it even more because of it's like, oh, you know, you guys hear, especially in like the spiritual like side of things, it's like the divine feminine is rising kind of thing. It's like you see more and more of this now, of this like female like archetype or something of that you have to bow down to her, and or I
Face
don't
the
know, like
hellfire.
exactly, but it's all through witchcraft and like
Yeah, you see a lot of that now, like witches.
magician, like potions, like
magic.
all the yeah, like all this magical woo-woo stuff, that it's like, well, why do you think witches were burned at the stake at one time? And you know, it's like,
Dude, that's the real truth right there. Like basically they were like, let's just have an excuse to like get rid of all these crazy women in our village.
well, that's how
All
they
this
used to do
silence is dangerous. Just fucking burn them at the
The-
stake.
There's this I think I talked about this before on the podcast, but there's this copywriting tool where it uses AI, and it
Yeah.
has like a bunch of the internet has been, it's like scraped through it, and you can basically feed it, be like, feed me some astrology ideas, write it in a hypnotic and persuasive tone that's also empowering, and it's fucking good. It's like, wow, I could see how somebody would write that. That'd be something I would read. And that's just like completely what this is.
You know, it's
But
funny.
it's so funny because people are so gullible.
What's funny is like I was watching because somebody on my feed had one of these, like they had a few of these like quizzes or whatever, right? And on one of them, the comment was, "Girl, I got the same exact thing. They be lying." It was hilarious.
You actually thought it was specific to you?
like it's not
Like-
just an algorithm.
But think about
that-
it, even it's like with the astrology, they were like at least like, oh, it's the birth month based on the planets. Now they're just like, it's your name.
Yeah,
Like
Right.
every woman named Angela or Lynette or Joni or whatever, like
yeah.
they all hate narcissists. Wow, what a coincidence.
Yeah. And it just feeds this like ego point in the mind, right? Like with the silence thing, it's like, what's happening when a woman is silent? She is like colluding and conniving and like just trying to all the back chat. Like it's all just the secret mind of like, I'm gonna fucking, I don't know.
You know what's funny is I
Spiteful.
at least with the
Oh,
at
I know why
least-
you like silence, Jake, with a woman. You know that saying, silence means consent.
You're painting me in a weird light here. You know, at least with the astrology stuff, I could like sort of see people with similar birthdays, some of them act similar, you know, at least with that stuff. With the names, it's just like you could have been named anything. Like you would still be the same person. But that point that Christine was bringing up as far as like the back chat, dude, I was just thinking of this. So when we were driving down, it just made me laugh because I was thinking, like, does everybody have back chat? Like everyone? And I was like, oh, what about monks? And it reminded me, do you remember there's this monk on your feed, on your Facebook,
Yeah.
who was getting really fucking nasty?
Because I was talking about meditation.
Yeah. And it was so hilarious because I remember this guy, and he would introduce himself as Venerable, right? And like I remember you're like, I don't know what this guy's name is. And I was like, oh, his name's Venerable. And you're like, that's not his fucking name. And I
It's
was
like
like,
title. It's like father for a priest or something. Right?
right. But I was like, but no, I've met him in person, and he calls himself Venerable. And
Maybe it is his name. Fuck, I don't know.
but it's hilarious because it would be like the same thing as somebody walking up and being like, hi, my name is Special. Hi, my name is Highly Esteemed. And you're like, okay, hi, Highly Esteemed. Like, that's an interesting name. You sure that's your name? You know, but it fits his character completely because he would walk around in these robes everywhere that he goes, right? Looking special, you know, looking like he's playing the part, you know. And I was like, oh,
Like
wow,
he should
yeah,
be venerated.
exactly. And it was literally just that, just wearing this, introducing himself as Venerable. And then like everyone's just like, oh wow, you're so wise. Like that's what I was going for. Thanks.
That's so funny because I looked up the root of the word venerable, with the etymology, and it
Mhm.
means to desire or strive for. So this dude just striving all the time to be accepted.
What's the root of the word vengeance?
Mm.
Probably the same thing.
But
No,
the
I'm
point
looking.
being, like, everyone has like
I'm just
this
seeing
back
what
chat,
the connection is. Yeah, go ahead, Drake.
you know, everyone has this back chat where they're like trying. Well, you can pretend in your mind it's like, oh, it's completely normal, like, oh, you wouldn't want to be on my bad side. It's like, why?
But that's what I was saying was the problem with meditation. You're just suppressing it.
Yeah.
And it was like he had this idea about helping poor people. That was his whole thing because he was like a Buddhist monk, right? And it's like, and I was trying to explain to him, no, only changing the system as an equal money system would actually help the poor. Because he was like hiding behind meditation. If we just teach them all meditation, like,
Right.
how does that
How
help?
can I
a
get
poor
'em
person,
rich?
actually? Right. And that was at the time I made some equal money videos, and that was how David
Yeah.
got involved, because he was like challenging me too. And then he actually listened to the videos and was like, oh, actually, what you're saying makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas this guy didn't. And then like a couple years later, he had a stroke.
I didn't know that part. I forgot that part.
I think he died.
Oh,
Damn.
probably because he was so heated about that Facebook conversation.
It's also
Wow.
funny with women too, because that whole narcissist thing, it's like, oh, how can you, like, 10 ways you can spot a narcissist or something. But it's like, this is the problem with the woman, like with feminism and women right now. It's like such a big narcissist ego point of like, I've been victimized my whole life, and everyone like just that playing that victim role. So it's like, I don't know, it's just like,
why are you looking to spot narcissists?
right. When
Yeah.
you're like look at women now with like OnlyFans and like I don't know, like just being a bunch of fucking hoes. It's just like, how is that empowering
see
at
that.
all?
Oh,
It's like, I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, you've completely just lost all, if there was any form of respect towards women, you've just completely lost it all, especially if you want to be like shaking your booty and like just stripping naked. It's like, you're not a high value woman anymore.
I
And
saw this.
this is the problem.
I saw this clip of Andrew Schultz, and he was like just talking to somebody in the audience, and he was like, so he was talking to a feminist apparently, and he's like, you don't think we have a lot in common? And she's like, I really don't think so. And he's like, well, come on, man, like, you want to have sex with as many guys as you want? I'm for that. I want you to have sex with as many guys as you want. You want to like be able to just have your tits out, do your thing. Like, I'm for that. You want to go and get a job and like, make that money. Like, I'm for that. Like, I want you to get this other half, man. You want to basically be the men that you all talk shit about. Like, go for it. Like, fucking, we're on the same team. It's
true.
pretty funny. Yeah.
Now, if a man does all that, it's toxic.
right.
If a man fucks a bunch of women, he's a toxic narcissist. But if a woman fucks a bunch of guys, she's empowered.
Yeah.
So this whole like projection onto men as being the narcissist, it's like, I'm curious, when a woman says a man is a narcissist, what does that mean? What do they mean by that?
He's not thinking of me. So he must
Yeah.
be thinking of
It's like not
himself.
considerate or something.
Yeah.
But don't the women give without expecting anything in return?
Did you actually believe that,
That's
Kim?
according
Aren't
to
you
their-
literally attracting narcissists by your hold on?
Yeah.
Was that the wait, was that
I was
that
one
was
of them.
that was the gentle side? That
uh,
was the strength.
yeah.
Or no, well, actually, I take that back. It's the gentle side on one of them. It's the weakness on the other one.
Oh.
It totally depends on your name, Cameron.
She helps without
Depends if your
expecting
name is
anything.
Tara or Lynette. Big difference.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like, all of this one do is the secret on that one. It says she hides how exhausted she is.
What did you
It's
find
like a
for-
total fucking victim thing. Like the entire thing is just a complete like victim, and I need you to feel some type of way for me. I'm gonna post this for a bunch of fucking likes.
what did you find for the etymology of vengeance?
Oh, it comes from vindictive. So it's like technically what that is from the word say. like DICO, say, declare, state. So it'd be more like like taking revenge.
Vindictive.
Yeah. Well, because there's the vin part and then the dictive, like dictation.
There's the VIN part, and then there's the diesel part. Anyway.
Moving
Hey,
along.
that's pretty good. Okay,
Speaking of
I have
toxic
to
narcissists.
help Jess with something, so I have to jump off. But you guys keep going.
All right. See you, Mitch. Have fun.
Bye, Mitchy.
Yeah. See you next week.
All right. Well, now that Mitch is gone,
The real podcast begins.
yeah, I was like looking through Facebook to see if I could find some more of those. It's such an interesting point because it's like an algorithm saying, I'm going to play into your ego, so you'll share this.
It's like
So you'll give me access to your friends list, to your all the details about you. You'll actually give this app permission.
yeah.
You're like literally giving it all your data. And then I guarantee you, like a week later, that person's going to make that post that says, tomorrow is the last day. I declare Facebook may not use, or Meta may not use my photos or videos or information. You know, Meta is changing its rules tomorrow, and
Yeah.
I do not participate according to legal section code 379. And you're like, do you know like some fucking Facebook algorithm is just getting you to fucking share that? And I don't know why. That's one I haven't figured out yet. Like I understand why people are sharing these things. Like I see
Yeah.
the pattern, but I don't know the pattern of. I don't see any highly intelligent people
You know what it
doing
is?
that post about like I declare.
It
I mean,
makes
it's like a boomer thing, right?
it makes you feel like safe in some way. So you continue doing whatever you're gonna do without trying to hide it.
You know, it reminds me of
What?
you've seen The Office, right?
No. She
Is
has.
it you that hasn't seen it?
I have not seen it.
You know
Oh,
that part? I don't know
really?
if you remember this part where I thought it was just Asif hadn't seen it. But I thought, or maybe he has and you haven't.
Asif
Uh,
has seen it. I have
That's what-
not.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyways, it was that part where he's like he's like he doesn't have any money or whatever, or he's like something.
Oh,
doesn't have
yeah,
money,
yeah,
and he
yeah,
goes
yeah.
and he goes, I declare bankruptcy. And like
Yeah.
the accountant guy's like, you can't just say you declare it. Like it's not. But that's literally
Yeah.
like I'm put on Facebook. I do not allow Facebook to use my image and likeness. And it's like, you're doing it on Facebook. Like, are they like checking like, let me go through their timeline. They go to like 1,000 posts, like, oh, nope, yep, they're not allowing us to do it. Like, how do they think it has an effect? What is the effect they're thinking it has?
Also, how would they be able to share your pictures with your friends if they're not allowed to use any of your information?
I'm gonna see if I can look at it. Why do people share the meme about Facebook not using their information?
I'm telling you, that's it. It's got to be older people, and it's got to be like making them feel safe so they continue using Facebook and continue giving their data. That's got to be it.
Seems kind of oxymoronic.
Well, I didn't say that these old people were smart or they knew how technology works. I'm just saying that's how they feel, right? Like, I don't know.
This one. I found somebody talking about stop falling for this Facebook scam. You've probably seen this scam. Your mom or dad posted it.
see,
You may have posted
That's
it.
a scam.
Don't forget, tomorrow starts the new Facebook rule where they can use your photos. Don't forget, deadline today. It can be used in court cases. Blah, blah. It's not real. It's a scam. Don't believe it. There are many reasons why it's a hoax. Because poor grammar, like obviously. Court cases doesn't own your content.
I don't think it's going to say why though in that.
No, of course not. But I was trying to think of like why. Because they're saying it's a scam, but what I can't figure out, what I was trying to figure out the other day, I was thinking about this, is like, how did it get started? Like, okay, with the name test thing, it's obvious. You're giving permission to the app. It's like somebody has a company where they literally create that shit, just like the horoscope, right? People buy the newspaper because they want to read the horoscope. But I was like trying to imagine who's the original person who was like, sit down and write a whole paragraph of text and be like, tomorrow starts the new deadline on Facebook. after tomorrow they can share your face, your don't, and like they're putting it so specific,
Yeah.
and then they're like share, and then someone shared it and they're like, ha ha ha, gotcha. Like, is that what it was? They're just like, oh, fooled ya. Or was it, maybe it's a it's like, you know, when people do those things where it's like your avatar version of yourself or this or that, and like you're just training some AI.
Uh-huh.
So
That's what
they
I
get
was
people to
thinking.
do it, they promote it. So, or like post a picture of yourself from 10 years ago, before and after, but it's really just trying to train the AI to be able to recognize a past photo and a new photo. And like,
Oh,
you're just
shit.
training the AIs,
Data
right?
collection.
That makes so much
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Right. So like, that's why these things occur, because it's being done on this platform. But I'm wondering, what does that post do? Is it
That
just
is that is so interesting that you say that though, because I've been seeing this trend on especially Instagram. I don't think they're doing it on Facebook, but obviously it's the same company. Where it's like a thread where it's like post a picture of like the fifth picture
Yeah.
on your camera roll, or like post a picture of your fiance, or put like, and I'm like, now with this like new data collection thing that I just like, realized after watching the Amazon documentary thing, I'm like, holy shit, like they're just collecting tons of, and what's the better way with like all this, facial recognition stuff? It's like you need as many pictures as possible. And it's funny because I'm
Okay.
like, I'm not participating in this shit because I hate things that are like trendy like that. So
Also,
yeah.
there's I think there's another dimension to it as well, which is being able to predict people's behavior. And like
Yeah.
sort of, and like, what if, this may be just conspiracy, but like, what if, okay, you're on your phone, right? Okay, you're on your phone, because you
Mhm.
can't do it if if you were on Facebook on your computer, you'd have to go to your phone to post the picture, right? Okay, so you're on your app on your phone, and it says post the fifth picture from your phone, no cheating, right? But the app can actually see you which picture you're choosing.
That's true.
I don't know why that would be valuable information, but it could. What if the algorithm is learning like who can be trusted, who can't be trusted,
Who's just gonna go along with like no cheating? Okay, no
right?
cheating.
And also like, who
I
cares
did it.
about self-image, who chose a particular picture, what kind of picture did they choose? Because all that can be quantified with data and so forth, right? So
Oh, that makes sense.
there's got to be something to that too. Like, these trends are not organic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good, because like I was just thinking, and it seems so arbitrary and like harmless, but like that point of like, okay, how much can they predict what you're going to do? It's such a relevant point, because if you bring it full circle, it's like, okay, being able to collect data and then interpret that data is so important for business, but it's also important in your own personal life as well. That's really what this process is. If you like want to distill it down to that, it's you're collecting your own data of how you operate and making it really clear so that you understand, so that you can predict what you're going to do so that you can change it. So you can be like, oh, okay, I know when the fridge has some fucking popsicles in it, I fucking eat all those shits. So let's change that. Like, I just learned this about myself. I was wondering why I'm such a fat ass, and now I get it. Like it's like, but people literally like, it's the information is running through them. They have no way of interpreting it, of understanding it. They cannot predict what they're going to do themselves. That's why it's like all these companies seem to know you better than you know yourself, because you have not taken the time to even realize who the fuck you are and look at all the data of who you are. But it's up to you to do that. Like it's Avery's been saying this lately. It's process done for you by you, right?
Fubu.
Fubu. Yeah. You know Fubu? Do you remember Fubu?
But doesn't you start with a Y?
Yeah, but do you remember Fubu?
Of course.
Okay. Do you remember
Missy
what it stood
Elliott.
for?
Yeah. For you, by
Full
you.
circle.
No,
Missy
for us, by
Elliott.
us. Yeah. But it's for us, by us. But it's the same thing. For you, by you. Yeah. But
Fi
like,
by. We should make fi by.
Bye.
You know, instead of like you being honest about why you eat the popsicle, you're like, I'd rather take a test about which popsicle color is my personality. Choose 3 popsicle colors if you're a narcissist. Okay.
Red.
Guess what? You're not a narcissist, but narcissists have hurt you, and you're silent, but that's deadly. think about it. Feminist women are just farts.
Keep going.
Silent but deadly.
Oh my god.
It's her anger that you must fear. The silence. It's not a weakness. The weakness is that she will never reveal to you that she suffers in silence. She's exhausted, but you can't know it. It's like maybe you're exhausted because you're fucking working at Walmart all day. And you come home and your fucking kids hate you. Also, maybe working hard is just exhausting.
So maybe
But it's like emotional exhaustion. It's like I just give and I give and I give.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
My time to Walmart. Katie said that I saw your comment there. It's like Katie said that that Facebook post thing is a sovereign citizen scam. Yeah, I think she's right. Like there's some kind of like connection to that. Like they can
Like
kinda
I'm
like a
declaring
Q-
my sovereignty, kind of. I
yeah,
guess.
it's like that QAnon.
Which
stuff,
sovereign
right?
citizen is also, isn't that oxymoronic as well?
It is. You can't be a sovereign and a citizen at the same time. And what's funny is someone came up to Christine and was like, hey, what do you think about this? And it was like, get your passport back from the US government, revoke your citizenship, and become a US national. It's just like, so you'll be like, because you were born in the US, the mistake you made was ticking off the box that said citizen. Just you have to reapply and not put anything that says citizen, and just you'll get a new passport, but you won't be a US citizen anymore. Then you'll be entitled to all the rights as a US national. And I was like, this
Okay, now let's look at that real quick. Why do people participate in that?
um
And why is it always spiritual people? Why is it always new age people? Actually, it's I guess new age and probably Christians too, huh?
yeah,
gonna
more
say,
Christians.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because these people are
This
Christians.
one's they're
Definitely
not
on the
so
spiritual too, though.
Yeah,
But
definitely on the spiritual. Yeah.
Also,
It's like it's this
I mean,
idea.
for those who don't know, spiritual is just new age is just Christianity in a new wrapper.
New vocabulary.
It's like when you go to the store.
Instead
You
of
see-
Christ ascending, it's the Christ consciousness in you ascending to the fifth dimension instead of however far away heaven is. They've just taken heaven and quantified it.
What do you mean? How do you mean quantified it? In what way?
Well, it's like if you ask a Christian where's heaven, like they have no fucking idea. It's like,
Above the firmament.
but I mean, but the average Christian is probably like, okay,
the
let's
average Christian does not
what do
know
you-
the
where
word
do you-
firmament.
when you think about the average Christian, where do you
The
think
King
they think
James
heaven
version.
is? Where do they think heaven is?
They think it's up there in the sky somewhere.
I know they might say that symbolically, but they don't actually think it's like you just keep going up, right? Where do they actually think it is?
Thought
I
that
don't
as a
know.
kid.
It-
I don't know.
like I remember like being 9 years old, laying in my bed, going, people actually think it's a place you go to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if I said, well, what direction is it? They would say,
Well,
well, it's
not
not in a
in the earth.
direction.
You would not go down into the earth.
Certainly can't be down.
That's where hell is, obviously.
Down is bad.
Have
The down direction, red. Have you been in an elevator? It's always red. Hell, devil.
Mhm.
Have you ever heard
Toxic
of
narcissists. The
people
devil is
saying-
the first toxic narcissist.
Have you ever heard of people saying they have ascension symptoms? Where like literally it's just like regular symptoms of like stuffy nose, stuffy head, or like chills or something like that. And they're like, these are ascension symptoms because I'm not actually sick, but I know that I've been doing a lot of shadow work, and my body is vibrating higher or whatever. And it's funny because I have a good friend of mine who from back home, who she's really into astrology and stuff, but she calls herself like a no bullshit kind of astrology, which she's like, this kind of stuff is like total bullshit. So she's like calling this stuff out, being like, you're not ascending anywhere. Like you're still in this reality. But so recently it was like, you're not experiencing ascension symptoms. Your nervous system is just dysregulated. Like, you know what I mean? Like just like practical, logical stuff. Anyways, I just think that's hilarious because people legitimately think that they're like transcending to some, like they're not going to be here anymore.
Do you know who else thought that? Have you ever fucking heard of Hell Bop and Heaven's
No.
Gate cult?
No. Wait. Heaven's Gate. I've heard of that.
They still have a website.
They wore like black Nikes, right? And
Yeah,
which are
they-
discontinued now. You cannot get those anymore. And
Really?
yeah, yeah, because of them, those fuckers. Those were some sick Nikes. No, just kidding. But you literally can't get them anymore because
Dude,
of
you
them.
can, it's crazy shit. You can watch all their interviews, like, because they would like do interviews like where they would talk on the camera and stuff like that. And like, but you can just see the person. It's like there's no meaning in what they're saying. And they're
Hmm.
still very like just yeah, you can see people searching, right? And they had this idea, they were following these two people who were clearly crazy, who at the end of the day, they thought that the Hale-Bopp comet was coming and that they were going to get onto it by killing themselves. They would be able to transcend into that spaceship and go into another dimension. Which people act
Isn't
like
that
that sounds
Scientology?
insane, right?
It's not, yeah, it's
No.
not that crazy.
Well, no,
I mean, it is crazy. It is crazy.
it's
Let me- let me
crazy,
s-
but I know what you mean. It's not crazy in the sense of how is that any different than Christianity? How is it any different than New Age? Like we were talking about the ascension stuff.
so
Like,
when I studied different religions, I looked at all their stories because I remember at that time, I only really understood Christianity. And I remember some of the let's go at leaders or teachers that I was being led by were basically like scoffing at other religions. And I thought that was weird. I don't know why, but I was like, that just
isn't it
seemed
just the same as what we're talking about?
exactly. That's what I was saying. So then that's when I started like investigating other religions and just like seeing all their crazy stories. Like, oh, how silly they thought that this child was born out of this person's armpit. And I'm like, okay, but like, what
You
we
think women
believe.
came from men's ribs, and
Yeah,
you think
exactly.
that
It's
the
like,
guy
wait a
that
minute, that's
Jesus
exactly the
was born from a
same.
woman who never had sex,
Yeah,
and then you're upset that people believe they can change their gender.
this is
But
exactly
your very foundation of all of your beliefs about your entire life, worldview, principles, values, everything is founded upon the idea that the most amazing person that ever existed, ever could exist, that took on the burdens of everybody and saved everybody from eternal like suffering, literally had only one set of chromosomes and was born from a woman who didn't have sex. And then you want to argue about sex and gender. I mean, hey, we could talk about how crazy the whole transgender stuff is, but you can't talk about it. It's crazy if you believe Jesus was born from a virgin.
Mm.
Because if you want to believe that, you have to admit there's some crazy shit you don't understand. And then if
Right.
you believe that, well, then maybe transgender people really are born in the wrong body. And I mean, it's like, how can you sit here and be like, I mean, you can't change physical biology and then be like, but I believe in miracles.
That was magic.
Wow, I imagine like it's what actually at least has some intellectual consistency. Okay?
yes, exactly. At least have some consistency across the board. But you know what? I've been listening to lately. Been listening to the some Equaf. Well, let's just say that.
Some Equaf.
Some Equaf. And
Equaf.org.
is it .org?
.com. I don't know.
It's .com.
Destiny.org. .com.
Destiny.org.
I don't know. I type this E on my thing
It's
and it just
dot
goes.
com.
And Equaf comes up. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
EQAFE.com.
That's right.
This is not a paid sponsorship.
We don't get paid by them. In fact, they'd prefer to just distance themselves. Anyway, I was listening to one of the audios and they were talking about basically this point of everyone has this point where they believe in God to some extent. And
We
God
talk about this
being
with Max and Seneca all the time, but yes.
okay, cool. But God being like not just this man in a beard or whatever, but God being what is it you're not willing to question?
Right.
What is it that you're not willing to stand up against? And it's just like, and I remember probably around, actually, it was around the same time that you were making these videos about the money system. You were making these posts about like money is God, right? Money is your God. Just claim it right here, right? and to me, it was just like, it was so inflammatory. This post that you made, I was just like I remember at that time, my heart was racing because I was like, that's the one thing you're not allowed to say. And this is also after I had left Christianity and like gone down the spiritual route and all this, right? And so I was like, God, I believe in God in a different way. When people ask me if I believe in God, like, yes, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. I was that
My God is totally even more illogical. At least the Christian God, it's like a dude who's somewhere who made stuff. Your God is like, it's just a thing.
No, my God was literally a system.
Everywhere and
It
nowhere.
was source, but it was literally like this machine, and I am a part of this machine, and that's literally how I thought of it. But anyway,
Jesus, you're like straight up in the Matrix.
I was
Literally.
Anyway,
remember
when
that
you made
part,
that
but okay.
post, I was like, fuck, I can't say that. I can't say money is my God, because then God will actually be mad at me. And then I'll go to hell for real. And then I was like, oh, wow, that's interesting. That's fucking interesting that I still have that, even after I thought like I was done with that aspect of religion or whatever.
You know, it's so funny, the whole Heaven's Gate cult thing where they kill themselves because people act like, I mean, it is insane, obviously, but people would act like they're so crazy, and that's why cults are bad and all this stuff. And it's like, but they're in cults, Christianity and so forth, right? Any of that stuff. But the interesting thing is, the only reason the other one seems like a threat is because it's just taking consumers out of the system. Whereas with the Christians, it's just there to pacify you, to keep you continuing the system as is. Like these people, although they're retarded, they put their money where their mouth is, so to speak. They were like, no, we actually think heaven's a real place we're going to go to. Well, let's just go there now. What the fuck are we doing here? Like literally. Versus all the Christians are like, number one, not willing to create heaven here. Like, it's just going to be there. And then it's like, so then what are you doing here? Like, and obviously you wouldn't want someone to kill themselves. It's just like, what's the logic behind continuing to suffer and suffer and suffer and suffer while claiming that you're already saved? But then why are you here? Like, what's the purpose? It's just literally to test your faith. I think that's what people believe.
Yeah.
It's like, it's just, okay, I have this much time. I don't know exactly how much time, but it is a finite amount. And I just have to, the whole time, the majority of the time, continue to say that God exists and that he is my savior and that's my salvation. And then anything that tries to throw me off of that, it doesn't matter what I do, as long as. And then, but the problem with it is like, you got Catholics, and Catholics ironically have the most poor people, I would think, right?
Yeah.
And yet the whole idea of Catholicism is, no, you actually have to do something as good to other people, right? Like, you can't just say you believe in God. Like, you have to also do something, like, and show and give and all that. But it's like, literally, of all the religions, like their Pope is the most, or their leader of their religion is like the most, it's like, okay, take like a Joel Osteen. He's a business person.
Yeah.
Right. But you take someone like the Pope, he's more like a king. He didn't even create anything. He was, quote, born into it. I know he wasn't technically born into it, but like he was, like, in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Like, he was just installed into that. He didn't create anything.
Mhm.
And yet he has all this power and wealth and control. And it's just like, it's literally a monarchical system. And yet that's the Christian religion that's like, no, you have to actually do something that's good for other people and give and all this stuff. And like, they have all these fucking poor people. I saw this funny thing. I forget who it was, man. Oh man, who was it? I was watching somebody and they were talking about this meme they saw. I don't know if you guys saw this. And it was like, what level of conspiracy theory are you? Like how much of a conspiracy theorist are you? It wasn't a quiz. It was just like a meme.
Yeah.
And it had a picture of Mother Teresa, like in her little thing, and then a picture of Anthony Fauci. And like, they look very similar. And then it said this level. I was like,
damn.
I'm not even sure what the implication is.
Damn. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. That's like,
It is funny. Well, it's funny because like yeah, that's the truth about Mother Teresa.
Yeah, exactly. It's like she actually abused a bunch of people, and she thought,
But why do people even think that she was a good person?
because I don't know, the church backed her up.
Fucking marketing.
Marketing. That's it.
It's like how many people would be willing to question Mother Teresa?
Not very many.
Not being able to question Mother Teresa is the same thing as not being able to question Disney. It's the same thing as not being able to question like the fucking economic system. It's not being able to question God. It's not being able to question school. It's not being able to question your job. Like it's the same fucking. That's the God. It's like this feelings
Yeah.
inside of you, these opinions.
Yeah. It's that's the point. And that's really like, it's crazy because like Disney may feel like a flimsy thing that like, oh, of course I could question Disney, but I love it. I enjoy it, you know, or like in the same sense of like, I could stop smoking anytime I want. I just don't want to stop. Like, okay. But at the same time, questioning Mother Teresa is like, that feels like this other feeling of like, this feels gross to an extent. It feels like I'm doing something wrong.
She's a saint.
Yeah. It's like,
She was sainted. And it's
I
like,
would not
are you
be the
Catholic?
asshole.
Are you Catholic? No.
But I
So
would
what
not
does it
be.
fucking mean to you that they declared her a saint?
Listen, I would not be the asshole who's just gonna hate on some old lady. Okay, you know that's what it feels like.
Kyle Crockett said it was the clothes.
Is the clothes?
That she was always wearing that nun like uniform, right? You can't like talk bad about someone like that, even though like monks and nuns are some of the most abusive people. Like my grandmother actually went to school on a convent, and she was like, the nuns are like some of the meanest people. And
totally.
my grandmother is religious, but she's like, I'm not religious in the sense of I need to go to church. Like I have my own relationship with God.
Sure.
Because she's like, I don't trust priests and nuns, because she had this like terrible experience of like they were just so abusive to her.
But how many people have that experience and then they become a nun?
Right.
And then you go to these convents, right?
So
and all
then
these
they can
nuns are
slap
just
up
like
little kids.
Yeah, but also like these nuns, they're all fucking lesbians and they're all like sucking the priest's dicks and stuff. Like, it's all this weird shit going on. And people don't act like, oh no, they're pure and holy of spirit. And it's like, it's no different than going to the fucking like, break room at a company. It's just people in an organization. And their starting point is not different, but they put on the robes and they say that they care about something, and then suddenly they're good people. And it's like, it's a fucking scam.
Not being able to question that specifically, like Mother Teresa, is the same as not being able to question the vaccine. It's exactly the same, because the point is like, you'll be shamed if you don't. You're
Dude,
the
have
asshole.
you ever actually read like anything that like a saint? I mean, obviously they weren't a saint at the time, but like a highly religious like person. Like I would highly suggest anybody who's listening to this get a copy of The Varieties of Religious Experience by William James. Right? He was like a psychologist from America from like in the 1800s, and he wrote this book, and it talks about religious experience, and he talks a lot about saints and that whole experience of becoming a saint and everything. It's a really cool book, and it's like, think of somebody who's like, I don't want to have sex with anybody, because when I imagine being united with God, it gives me the most intense orgasm I can ever imagine, I can experience, like possibly. And like just being united with him and being his servant and like doing everything for him and for that experience of being finally united, that makes everything worth it. That's literally what a nun is.
So
I mean, I'm not trying to caricature. Like you read the books of the best nuns, like the fucking ones who became saints and shit. And that's how they describe it. Like that's all enlightenment is. It's like, I want to come infinitely. Just like the most intense like that's all it fucking is. You're imagining it's going to be like this infinite, eternal orgasm. And you want to talk about toxic narcissism. Do you know what I mean? And like, I'll be here in physical reality and allow relationships that are not best to continue suffering, because I think at some point I'm going to get some from the universe. You know what I mean? Like that's the level of logic. That's the actual logic of it.
Yeah. And like the total mind and energy takeover too. You know what I mean? To like be aspiring to this like
Dude, and
union.
also in that book he talks about a lot of like the monks, right? Like there'd be one guy who he would wear this shirt, they called him hair shirts. Have you heard of this?
Oh yeah,
It's
where
like, I
they're
don't know what
like,
they're made of, but like they're super fucking itchy. Like I
I,
mean,
I
like,
think they're
you
made
ever
of
like
like
had an itchy
wool.
sweater and it's just like you're like, ah, fuck this. Like it's like, imagine it's so fucking itchy, you're just constantly like your whole body is just fucking itching like a motherfucker, like all day.
I'm itching
So
right
they would
now.
wear these, they would wear this shirt, and then he would write about it, like, you know, I was tempted to take it off today, but I know my suffering brings me closer to union with God. And there'd be one guy who had like this whip thing with like metal on it, and he would whip himself with it. And like in that pain and that suffering, it's like he would give up himself into like, so he could get closer to that union with, I mean, imagine like that's the level. So when somebody's praying to God, they're just kind of half-assing it. Like they're trying to be close to God, but these people were like, no, you guys are telling me that there's this God out there that I can unite with, and I have to let go of everything of who I am and become a total servant. How can I do that? They were like fucking artists. You know what I'm saying? Like, imagine an artist who's like, I'm going to dedicate my entire life to like making something so fucking intense and crazy. Like no one could ever do it unless I devoted my whole life to it. You know what I mean? That's what they were doing, but they were just doing it like, so it becomes like a piece of artwork as a story that they use to give to other people to like look up to and be like, do you know what I mean? It's like if you're an artist in art school and you're like, but look at the Van Goghs, like maybe someday I could have that level of fame or success or whatever, or
Right.
intense experience.
But actually consider it as far as like, imagine if they put, because the intensity is really cool actually. Like imagine
Sure.
putting that sort of intensity towards actually creating a world that's best, where it's like, I don't give a fuck about how I feel
Right.
and like what I'll have to go through, but I'm going to fucking do this.
Right. The
You know?
intensity is the cool part about the person. It's just they got fucking brainwashed when they were a kid.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. Like if they had been supported effectively with actual reality of how it works and with real principles, they could have applied that intensity somewhere else.
Oh, okay. So I want to bring this up because obviously what we're saying is, you know, for
Actually, can I add something real quick, Drake? The
Go ahead.
reason why most people who have jobs fail when they try to go into business and so forth is because they don't apply the intensity.
Hmm.
And that's the real key, is that intensity of actually making it work. Like when they talk about, oh, network marketing, for example, doesn't work. And it's like, that's because most people go into it and they apply a little bit, but they don't apply real intensity and sustained intensity.
Mhm.
Like imagine if you were doing the business like you were trying to achieve sainthood. Dude, that's a different level of intensity that's required, because that's the person who succeeds. At least they succeeded in quote becoming a saint and everybody recognizing them. That's the level of Bill Gates, of Steve Jobs, of Elon Musk, of Jeff Bezos, of all these other things. Your level of intensity, imagine, is I'm going to put a Facebook post that says Facebook may not use my fucking data. Meanwhile, you're actually using the Facebook to fucking entertain yourself anyway. So what right do you have to complain about what they do with it?
Right.
And who has more intensity, you or Mark Zuckerberg?
Definitely Zuck.
You see what I mean? That intensity he put in to create the thing. And then this person's complaining, how dare they use my data and spy on me? Like, why do you think they fucking created it? Are you retarded?
Yeah. Man, that's a good title right there. Is like,
Imagine complaining about the abuse that goes on in schools, like the child abuse and stuff. It's like, what do you think is the point? Like, oh, there's all this section. I'm not saying we shouldn't complain about it. We shouldn't talk about it, but it's like, there's all this like sexual abuse and they're abusing children and like emotional and they're brainwashing. It's like, yeah. The purpose of the system is to abuse children, to diminish them to the point where they will never, ever challenge people like Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates.
yeah, that's the point that I wanted to bring up, is just like that point in particular of how we know that the children are the future, but we also know that us influencing them is going to influence that future, hence why we have the reality that we have right now. And so it's all just like, okay, yeah, you want to put it onto the children as if it's going to be their responsibility. It's like, you're not even preparing them for that responsibility. And then you put them in schools, and then what's the purpose of a school? And I saw this on Facebook. Somebody was saying, what do you think about teaching emotional intelligence in schools?
People love to talk about that, yeah.
And somebody was like, somebody posted, because there was a bunch of bullshit on there, but somebody posted like, hey, you should be teaching your kid at home emotional intelligence, the school is not the place for that. In fact, the school is a really abusive system. And then the person respond, and I was like, I agreed with them on that post.
Yeah.
I was like, hey, yeah, this person, they're making a lot of sense. And I'm like, I want to talk to that person. And then the original poster replied and was like, got CC'd me and her. And it was just like, well, I'm saying this because I have a friend who's doing it and they've seen such great results. And I'm like, dude, are you fucking retarded though?
So one out of like the millions of teachers is
Like,
gonna
Also,
make
they
a
don't have great
difference.
results. Yeah.
Well, okay. All right. So this is, like you're saying, one out of millions of teachers. Also, this is going to happen in 1 year of their 12 years of school. And then you might say, oh, well, that's why
Like,
we should
so
do this
statistically
in every classroom.
insignificant.
In every classroom, they should have this. Okay, let's say that's the case. But again, your child is spending how much time at school and then how much time like learning about all the other bullshit that they want to do at school. Like, okay, your idea of what they should be learning at school is not what the fuck they learn at school. Your idea of what they learn at school is like, oh, my child's going to learn how to do math. They're going to learn how to read. They're going to learn how to like be really intelligent. No, you dumbass. That is not what school is for. That's why they're never going to adopt emotional intelligence in school.
Yeah.
And if they do, it's just going to be some bullshit to get your kid to just accept like, oh, I'm just happy with the life that I have. That's so fucking retarded. And I'm just going to wear this hair shirt. And that's what life is about. Like
Right.
that's what
the
you're getting-
emotional intelligence will be defined in the context of being a slave.
Yes.
It's like being aware of how other people feel. So that way, when you have a job, you don't bristle people the wrong way. You know what I mean? It's not in the context of actually like, okay, I understand how you feel, so I'm going to fucking manipulate you to do what is best.
Which, if you could actually read, that's what How to Win Friends and Influence People is. That's what it's like. Okay, here's what you need to understand about people. Here's how people want to be communicated with. Use that to do something with it. Not just, oh, I'm just a pleasant person to be around. Like, you dumbass, you didn't get it. You fucked up.
They're like, if you put on a pleasing personality when you want something, people will be more likely to give it to you. It's
like, but have a purpose with it. Have some sort of purpose. Like, well, not have some sort of purpose. Have the purpose to do what is best.
Yeah.
Like, create a world that's best. Have this purpose. Like, okay, learn those skills. Learn how to manipulate that, because that's what people are manipulated by. And if they're going to be manipulated by it, manipulate them to do the very best thing.
It's funny because when you say manipulation, people get offended. Like they're going to react like, oh, you're saying you should manipulate people. And it's
I am saying you should manipulate people.
Right. But they think it means that you should deceive, you should harm, you should abuse. And it's like, if I'm typing on my keyboard, I'm manipulating my keyboard.
Mm-hmm.
If I press the right keys, then I'm doing it correctly. If I press the wrong keys, I'm doing it incorrectly. Either way, you're manipulating no matter what.
Right.
I'm just making sure that's clear to people. It's like, if you're just shouting at people and you're doing a tantrum, that's manipulating.
Mm-hmm.
If you're being pleasing and kind and all that's manipulating. Everything is manipulation because it means to like physically mold things. That's all it means. It doesn't mean something negative. We've been programmed with that it's a negative. So we won't participate in it. Meanwhile, governments manipulate. Corporations, like, what do you think advertising is?
Yeah.
It's literally manipulate. And then people would say like, oh, you're suggesting people be manipulated. I'm like, oh, no, I meant to say you should advertise to them. Oh, okay, cool. I just meant that you should say nice words to them so they'll feel good and do what you want. Oh, okay, yeah, sure, that.
I'm just saying
that's manipulating. No, it's not. Don't you say manipulation? That's for toxic narcissists.
I was gonna say that's how you got that quiz on your feed.
You got manipulated by you being a narcissist.
I didn't get manipulated. No, that never happened to me. No,
I don't manipulate.
I've never been manipulated. I would never allow anyone to manipulate me. It's like, where does that personality even come from?
Right.
Like,
somebody fucking taught you that.
Right.
I really suggest everybody also, while you're reading Varieties of Religious Experience, listen to the audio from Bernard called Depression is an Attempt to Manipulate. No, depression is an attempt to control others in your environment. It's control, right? I always say it's manipulative. It's control.
It's control. Yeah.
That's a good one. Because you'll see how you actually manipulate other people when you feel bad to make you feel better.
You're always trying to manipulate. Like, kids are trying to manipulate you all the time. It's not a bad thing. Like, like parents are, you're trying to manipulate me. Like, bitch, you're trying to manipulate me to not manipulate you. What the fuck?
Right. Like, you're trying to make me feel bad about manipulating you.
It was
You-
always so frustrating while growing up.
right? Like, you've been manipulating me with spankings this entire time. Spankings and timeout
Stop
and yelling.
shouting at me. You don't shout. Shouting is not a way to get what you want. You understand me?
Stop
like-
shouting at me.
So
I would literally
I
talk back.
should do it because that would prove you right. I want to make sure.
Yeah.
Because if you're shouting at me, then that shouldn't get what you want. So I need to keep shouting because you told me shouting doesn't get you what you want. So if you're shouting, I have to do the opposite of what you're saying to help. So I don't want you to be wrong, Dad.
I'm just trying to help you be logically correct.
It's like with
okay?
our kids, we don't fucking tell them, like, we'll support them if they're doing an expression that doesn't make sense. We'll explain to them why the expression doesn't make sense in that context, but we don't punish them or yell at them for doing a particular expression. We'll just say that's not going to get what you're wanting. You have to communicate with me. Like, there's plenty of times where, like, if I'm telling Max I want him to do something, he'll be like, fuck off, Cameron. Because he's like trying to focus on something. And I'm like, well, why are you telling me to fuck off? Like, what is it that you're trying to do right now? And he's like, oh, well, I'm trying to do this. So I'm helping him. See, some people might think like, you should not allow him to do that. And it's like, if I tell him he should not do that, that expression becomes suppressed
Yeah.
rather than let him play with it and see what's the consequence and then support him to see, like, in that context, you shouting fuck off, Cameron, it's not helping. It's not helping me understand what you're doing. I still need you to do this. It's only creating more conflict within understanding. So
And-
it's like a lesson. It's not like oh, you don't speak to me like that, mister.
And why would
That doesn't work.
why would parents not want their kids to do that? For one, it's that, like, you don't respect me, and so it's like it's a personal thing. But then two, it's like you don't want them to be expressing themselves in public like that because they're not going to get what they want most of the time. But two, but another addition to that is then it reflects poorly on you as the parent again. So it's again personal, you know.
That point about respect is interesting because let's say you said to me, you know, fuck you, Cameron, right? And I would say, you don't respect me. So you need to say, you don't say that to me. And you said, okay, I won't say it to you. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you respect me now?
No, I still feel like fuck you, Cameron.
You aren't saying it though. So I'm thinking, oh, now he respects me. So what does respect mean in that context? Because if the child was, if it actually is a sign of disrespect, meaning they do not respect you, they don't see your value and your worth, they do not respect it, then you telling them not to say something to you doesn't change whether they actually respect you.
It's fear. They fear you.
But regardless, it's not respect. Like, I could say, like, well, okay, I'm just gonna think it, or I'm just gonna not say those words. It's like if there was a piece of artwork and I really thought it was beautiful, versus if I was like, that's a piece of shit artwork, that's terrible. And someone says, don't say that's a piece of shit, like, that's not very nice. And I'm saying, okay, I won't say it. Does that mean I actually like it?
No.
If I don't say it's shit?
No.
So what is it that you want as a parent? Do you actually want your child to respect you, or do you want them to pretend like they respect you? Like, is respect when you do, or like, if my child can say fuck off when he's frustrated, and then I don't get angry and I talk to him about it, about what he's actually angry about, instead of worrying about how he expressed it, wouldn't he respect me more? Wouldn't he be like, wow, I really appreciate you supporting me to understand in this context, whatever's going on, like, whatever why am I reacting to being told to fuck off?
Kim, I already got angry and I smacked the kid. So I
I
didn't have
I'm
time
already
to
here.
explain.
Okay,
Yeah.
you're talking here. We're already. He's already in school. He's already suppressed. He's
Yeah.
already transgender. He already hates me. I'm already got him on hormone blockers. Can you help me with how to get him to be an entrepreneur now?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly.
I want to work it back a little bit here. You know? I
That-
can't
no,
get my kid to. I just, you know, how do I get my kid to be interested in entrepreneurship? You know, he's 13 years old, and I really want him to get interested. What does he doing all day? He plays video games. And what does he do the rest of the day? He goes to school. And what do? I go to a job. What books would you recommend, Cameron? What books would you recommend to get him interested in entrepreneurship? I'm like, That's, people ask me shit like that. And it's like, first of all, their vocabulary is fucked.
Yeah.
If all they want to do is play video games, they're fucked. They're not in what book, like imagine thinking there's some magical book that kid can read. Their dopamine is fucked. Their understanding of reality is fucked. They're already programmed to be a slave since they've been in school. And now, so am I saying there's no solution? No, I'm not saying there's no solution, but is it going to be just give me the book to tell them to read? They're not going to have the vocabulary for it. See, all we're doing with our kids is showing what happens if you prevent the problem. Other people are showing what happens when you start to fix it. Right? Like the Isabels are a really great example of people who have taken children who have already, also the Spahars, right? Where it's like you have kids that are already in school, then they see like, hey, there's another way of doing this. And they're now walking it back and then rebuilding.
Yeah.
And it takes time. And there's
Yeah.
consequence that's there and that has to be considered and walked through and so forth. But they're seeing like, well, the other path is going nowhere. So just because you're in a state of consequence, that doesn't mean to continue doing what you're doing. And that's what I see going on within the world right now with our current leaders. Well, it's all fucking collapsing, but you know what? That idea of just controlling everybody and trying to manage everything and control everybody and make them slaves, let's just double down on that. I'm like, no, that's why the system's not working. It's not because you haven't figured out the right control mechanism. It's because people are not designed to be slaves. That may be their programming, but we're actually designed as equals.
Yeah.
If we weren't, you would have slave bodies and you'd have, like, because think about it. Are Black people inherently physically slaves compared to other races? Their bodies are physically different. There's just a difference in skin color. That's the only difference.
We also run faster, jump
You run
higher.
faster and you dance better. Yes. But what I'm saying is, it's not like you are, it's like, okay, let's say you had robots and you had one robot that could like walk and talk and move and do any range of motion. And you had another robot, which all it could do is go like this, pick something up and put it down. There's an inherent inequality built into this robot versus the other one. That's not the case with human beings.
Right.
And then we have a cultural problem through words, through programming, where people of certain races, and not just also races, like white people who are poor face the same problem. They're not programmed with the effective vocabulary to utilize the system that's here to function as an equal in the system. So just because we're designed as equals doesn't mean we function as equals, but that's because of the systems that we have in place. And that's why we always talk about equalizing the system, equalizing education for everybody, because then suddenly, if every child that was born, regardless of race, understand how to build a business, well, fuck, who's going to be the slaves now?
Yeah.
And so is your responsible, but who's going to be the slaves? We got to have the slaves. Okay, your kids then, and you be the slaves then. Well, I mean, no, I want to be a doctor. Well, he's still a slave, but I want to make a lot of money. It's like, if we paid the doctor just as much as the janitor, then who would want to be a doctor? I'm like, I don't know, people who actually care about your health.
Yeah.
Like,
Exactly. What a thought. What
What
a
a thought.
concept.
wouldn't that be great?
No,
They
I
don't
want
care
the
about
most
money.
competitive person who's
If companies couldn't put patents on life-saving drugs, they wouldn't make them. I'm like, oh, maybe they'd actually make ones that work.
yeah.
And they wouldn't just fucking market you into thinking they were. It is so funny. We're going to sit here on an individual basis and be like, you shouldn't manipulate people. And like, meanwhile, like if somebody can't see now over the last 3 years, and when I say see, I don't mean like seeing it on their own. It might require someone to spell it out for you, like we're doing,
Sure.
or like someone to talk to you and be like, hey, let's look at this. Let's contextualize it. Can you see this? So I'm not expecting people just to like see everything. But if after being presented with, here's actually what's going on, here's the actual solution, then it just comes down to your choice. Are you going to be one of the people, the very few people in this world at this stage who are going to stand up, step up, and actually support the world to change through changing yourself and supporting others? That's what it comes down to. Is
Yeah.
Are you going to make that choice? Just like I told Max, I said, now you're learning all this stuff at a very young age, stuff that even Warren Buffett didn't know. Bill Gates, none of these fucking guys knew at your age, Max, what you're learning. So what are you going to do with it? You have to make a choice within yourself. Are you going to be evil? Because you could be an asshole and you could be evil and you can make billions of dollars. The money system doesn't care. You could be totally fucking evil and make money. I said, but that's going to be up to you as a choice. Is that what's important? Or are you going to do what's best? And you can still become wealthy. You can still become rich. In fact, you have to be, because if you're not, you didn't have any effect. So if you're not
Yeah.
wealthy right now, if you're not insanely wealthy, you haven't made a difference yet. And if you're not surrounded by other people with the same principles who are insanely wealthy, you haven't made a difference yet. Now is not the time to be like, well, what were we going to say, Christine?
And that's the biggest difference with Max compared to like all these other guys. It's like, what were their peer groups when they even got to that level? It's like everyone who's just participating in this capitalistic
Right.
money system where it is like it's dog eat dog, right? You have to have that mindset of like, I am going to take over. It was really cool watching that Jeff Bezos documentary because it's like, yeah, like that he's just doing what any other capitalist would want to do for their business, right? But that's what's cool with Max. It's like, and what we've, what you and Katie have really nurtured and fostered with this community and how much it's grown with like all the people that are in it now. It's like, who do you want Max to be around? Obviously, other people with the same principles, with kids that have the same principles and being raised with these principles, so that there's even more like incentive for Max to like, want to do something that's actually best. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's like he's going to have direction from you and Katie, but it's like how much easier it is to like be in a group that's actually doing the same thing. And that's what Bernard always emphasizes. It's like, we're going to be able to do this in a group. It's not going to be through the individual.
Well, yeah, and you're right. And I don't mean to diminish what you said, but it's not just about it being easier. It's impossible.
Yeah.
Otherwise,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
yeah,
just to
yeah,
be clear for
100%.
everybody else, I know you know that, but it's like, it's not possible to change the system. One person, 10 people, it has to be a very large number of people. And, not to go into a whole side thing right now, because probably will end pretty soon, I'm thinking, right? But,
You have to.
but the whole thing that's going on with Kanye West is interesting because he's showing what happens when you start to stand up. And that doesn't mean what he's saying is correct.
Mm.
And look, I don't give a fuck about people thinking me or anybody else is anti-Semitic. I give a shit about those labels. So I'm not saying whether he's right or wrong about what he's saying. I just mean like he's not presenting a real solution. That's all. I don't give a fuck what he's saying.
Yeah.
Like it's just whether he's presenting a solution that actually is real. He is bringing up problems, which is interesting. But it just shows, even if he's apparently, according to him, according to maybe other sources too, he's the richest Black person or whatever you want to call African-American ever in history. Apparently.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Apparently. And yet they took his kids. He's getting divorced. I don't know if he's already divorced. I don't know if he is or not, but he's getting divorced, whatever, or he is. And everybody's turning his back. The media doesn't care about him. They're just painting him a certain way. Whether that's valid or not, it doesn't matter. He can't do it on his own. So he's showing people, when you try to make a bunch of money first, and then you're going to stand up. Actually, he made a really cool point the other day, right? He said, I think it was him. I'm pretty sure it was him. Somebody, anyways, made this point about no one can do what Trump did. And maybe I'm misquoting it or misparaphrasing it, but it was like, also Trump wasn't even successful anyways. Why?
Nothing's changed.
Well, yes. I mean, obviously evidence wise, right?
Yeah.
But he had to put all these idiots in office.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, the fucking guy who ran the FDA under him went to work on the board of Pfizer like 3 months afterwards or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay. He bought into all the vaccine stuff. We know all that. But what I mean is the media was against him.
Right.
He was really effective at using the media to get the popularity to put himself where he wanted to be.
Right.
But if the media stays against you, and this was the point I think that Kanye West was making, if the media stays against you, you're fucked. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
Like, and I always kept seeing that of like, man, if literally the media would just be like, hey, let's all get on board with this idea of bringing America back to greatness, businesses, reducing taxes, like all these great things, like the country would be in a totally different fucking place.
100%.
Now, that was never going to happen because people are going to double down on their fucking programming. So that was never going to happen. But he made a cool point. Kanye was saying, like, you can't go and do what he did and then be successful without the media, with the media against you.
Yeah.
It's kind of ironic because he's literally proving that point right now. Like,
Yeah.
but he did make this interesting point, which I'm not putting any faith or anything in Kanye becoming president or whatever, but he made this point because I think that's his plan, is he wants to run again, I'm assuming. But he made this point of, he said, by the time 2024 comes, he's like, the media's going to love me. They're going to be friends with me. So he's got some idea, whether he's right or wrong, or it's actually going to happen or not. He's making a cool point that his plan is to, yeah, he looks crazy right now. That's getting all the attention, but he's going to figure out a way to get everyone now on his side eventually. Whether that happens or not.
I don't put it past him. He's
Would it change anything?
No, it wouldn't change anything.
No, and I
But it
think
would-
he's wrong. Like, it's not gonna. If the only way for him to do it is to compromise in some way, because he
Mm,
doesn't have enough people with Rexwell principles. But the point of what he's saying is pretty cool. And to realize, like, if you don't have the media, if you don't have the thing that's constantly impulsing everybody with, it's like, but he's not just the media. You got to have the education system. You have to have
Yeah.
the money system on your side.
Yeah.
Right. So it's not going to happen from this one person, because how are you going to get the media
yeah.
when they're
That's
when they're in the interest of everybody else? Right. So that's why it's grassroots. It's about everybody proving this point. You're proving this process to the world by doing it. Right. Do you guys want to wrap it up here? I know we got to go soon.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yeah. Hey, just that point that you were making, just to make it really clear, it's like, okay, we've created this community thus far. Now, how much more can we grow, and how much faster can we grow as well when all of us in the community takes on the same responsibility to grow it just as much, each one of us. And then we help those who come in understand that responsibility as well, right? And that's really the point, is we're here to continue growing and sharing everything that's been made available to us, sharing these tools, sharing this process, sharing all of this, so that we can create a world that's not only best, but also we can create the next generation to understand on this real level that we're talking about, of understanding their reality around them, being able to process the information, and then being able to do the best thing with it, and that's going to be something really amazing to see as we become the aging population, and we can see the result of what we've done, of what we prepared the world for, right? But it only happens if you actually do it. It's not something that you could just sit on your ass and be like, oh, these guys will take care of it. We all have to take on that responsibility. So are you going to be evil and just sit on your ass? Or are you going to do the best thing and be on Team Life? So, yep, we'll wrap it up there and see you guys next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.